Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Budget betrayal, BBC bias, Chagos chaos. Those are the three big topics we're talking about between now and 7 o'clock. An astonishing row in regard to BBC bias. We reported it on the show yesterday. We'll be talking more about it today. This is a splicing together of clips of Donald Trump giving a fake impression of what he said on January the 6th. We'll be talking to a columnist about that very soon. Also, Rachel Reeves, is she about to put up income tax or national insurance or what's the other one? Income tax, national insurance and VAT, or is she about to put up all three? There was an astonishing speech this morning that gave more questions than answers. I think it's laying the groundwork until the 26th of November when she puts taxes up for every single one of us. Lots to discuss in all of that. Also, the Chagos deal could be going awry because of a Lords amendment. Many members of the House of Lords are annoyed that the Chagos Islanders themselves have not been consulted. So much to discuss, including train safety. That rumbles on again into today. Dick Cheney's also dead, the former Vice President of the United States. He was 84 years old. Whatever your opinion, whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, give me a shout. 0344 499 1000 is the hotline to the home of free speech, the home of common sense. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, less than a minute please, we'll play those out, 0344 499 1000. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on that number or give me a ring on that number. Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. Isabel Oakeshot's coming up in a second for her view on not just what Rachel Reeves has said, but her astonishing exclusive about the man who had 10 armed police officers storming his home because he's accused of stealing a bowl of pasta worth 77 pence. Yes, really. What's his real crime? I think it's probably criticising the migrant hotel in which he worked and what actually went on there. Lots to discuss. Let's get started now on Talk Drive. Well, let's get into the budget betrayal first and foremost, because Rachel Reeves gave a speech this morning where she laid the groundwork. This is absolutely extraordinary that we're in this economic situation. It's less than a month to the budget, and clearly Rachel Reeves is laying the groundwork to put up taxes to contradict the Labour manifesto, to contradict what she said last year. I think it was quite foolish, actually, to say that 75% of the taxes in this country, which are those three categories, national insurance, VAT and income tax, couldn't be touched. Well, quelle surprise, Rachel Reeves of the 26th of November 2025 is going to have to contradict Rachel Reeves of the 30th of October 2024. Earlier today, she set out the choices she says she faces. This was at 10 Downing Street. This is what happened.
I was appointed Chancellor. People put their faith in me to take our country forward, not to be swayed by political convenience, not to always do what is popular, but to do what is right. At the budget, I will continue to deliver on the priorities of the British people, cutting NHS waiting lists, cutting the national debt, and cutting the cost of living. And in the context of the long-term challenges on our productivity and heightened global uncertainty, any Chancellor of any party would be standing here today facing the choices that I face.
Not doing what is popular, but doing what is right. I would argue that doing what is right is keeping a solemn promise that you made to the electorate. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. She also spoke about the burden of national debt.
The UK's national debt now stands at £2.6 trillion, equivalent to 94% of GDP. Before the mini-budget, our borrowing costs were in the middle of the pack compared to other advanced economies. But now we have the highest borrowing costs of any G7 country. Today, 1 in every £10 of taxpayers' money is spent on debt interest. Not paying that debt down, but just paying the interest to our creditors. At the budget last year, I changed the fiscal rules to strike a careful balance, to invest more in capital alongside a credible plan to grow our economy and bring debt down within this Parliament. That was the right decision to break the cycle of low productivity and low growth.
Rachel Reeves speaking there at a speech in Downing Street. She's actually in the press room at number 9 Downing Street, but the effect was the same. It's really interesting to see how people have reacted, not least the leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch. This is what she had to say in reaction to what Rachel Reeves' speech said this morning.
The Chancellor's speech was one long waffle bomb. A laundry list of excuses. She blamed absolutely everybody else for her own choices, her own decisions, her own failures. She claims she will focus on the priorities of the British public. Whose priority is it to pay more tax? It is basic economics that if you tax something, you get less of it. Remember those graduates who aren't finding work? Some people are blaming AI. It's not AI's fault. You can draw a direct line between what Rachel Reeves did in the budget last year and the dire prospects that many of those graduates are facing now.
I actually disagree with Kemi Badenoch. I don't think it was a waffle bomb. I think what Rachel Reeves said was quite definitive. I think it's pretty definitive that we're going to get tax rises. I don't think it was blaming everyone else necessarily, although there was quite a lot of that. But I think it was pretty definitive. Taxes are going to go up. Let's find out what our international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, thinks. Isabel, you're very welcome to the programme. What are your impressions of what Rachel Reeves said and the reaction all day to it?
Well, I listened to that speech sort of open-mouthed, really. I've never heard of anything like it in the run-up to a budget before. I mean, in the days when I was a Sunday newspaper political editor, you know, we used to spend the weekends before budgets desperately trying to find out what was going to be in them, you know, trying to predict and so on. Rachel Reeves has pretty much set it out. You know, she didn't want to say today that she was about to break the manifesto pledges on not raising income tax and doubtless a number of other manifesto pledges. But we all know, those of us that have been in the political game for a while, it's what's not said that you sometimes need to pay attention to. And what she gave was a series of non-denials when asked whether she was going to break manifesto pledges. I sort of expected the end of this speech to have a few more specifics in it. But in a sense, maybe you're right, Peter, it didn't need to. What she was saying there, in short, is you are all going to be hammered at the next budget and don't expect anything otherwise. I'm very surprised she did it because I don't see what it actually achieved, really.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, actually, that analysis there, Isabel, in terms of the fact that Rachel Reeves isn't giving specifics, but she's laying the groundwork here. It is very unusual to have a speech like this. It's not really a speech to anybody apart from the press pack and the nation. In that sense, these speeches at Downing Street don't happen very often. How much trouble do you think she's in?
I think she's in deep trouble. And, you know, I sort of hesitate to say this because it carries a risk of sounding sexist. And as a woman, the last thing I like is people commenting on appearances. You know, she is the first female chancellor and good for her on that front. But I must say she looked awful. She looked haggard, she looked tired, she looked anxious. And I would say the same if it was a man standing up there delivering that speech. I really thought she looked worryingly awkward, harassed, she just didn't look right. And I think that provides us with a little insight into what she's going through. You know, she is trying to do her best. I don't impugn her motives. She is trying to do her best as she sees it. I happen not to agree with her outlook. And she just cannot make any of the numbers remotely stack up, and all the projections are getting worse. And, you know, she was being pretty specific about that, wasn't she? She was saying, you know, the OBR is revising its forecasts, and I think we now know that they're going to be absolutely dire.
In regard to the global factors she's talking about, we're talking about how global factors are a major issue in all of this, and her headroom is less than she thought she would be. How much do you think she personally is to blame for the dire economic state? They will talk about their economic inheritance. Any Conservative will, of course, say it was the fastest growing economy in the G7. How much personal responsibility does she have here, and how likely is it that she's going to contradict herself from a year previously at this budget?
Well, we could be quite specific about this and talk about the national insurance rise for employers, which has been devastating. But I also think that there was a very telling little bit of that statement, and that it was actually came in the question session afterwards, the Q&A with the journalist, where she was asked about whether she agreed with, I think it's a reform policy of cutting disability benefits, PIP payments for people who are suffering from anxiety. And she wouldn't go down that route. She started prattling on about how the pandemic had taken a terrible toll on people's mental health. And for that reason, basically, the implication was, they're not going to make any adjustments to things like these sort of out of work illness benefits for anxiety. And I just thought, you know what? Of course, some people really truly do suffer from terrible anxiety. But if that's a throwback to the pandemic, we're 5 years on now. If people are still anxious because of the pandemic, then something else is going very, very wrong with our system. And I thought, that sums it up, really. Labour is not going to be brave enough to take on any of these vested interests, to actually, face some of these scroungers down. I'm not saying everyone's a scrounger before people start ringing in. Of course they're not, but we all know that there is a lot of fat in the system that needs to be cut. And Labour just doesn't actually have the gumption to do it. And even if she wanted to, and we know that she did want to make some of these cuts a long time ago, she can't, because the backbenchers just won't let it through.
A couple of other stories I'd like your opinion on just while I have you, Isabel. I just want to remind ourselves how the BBC edited Donald Trump.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's different. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell.
Isabel, this is a major issue of trust for the BBC. They run this ad. In fact, we've had a very pertinent, I read about this in an article actually, and a very pertinent message from Robert Taylor in Nottingham saying, I find it somewhat amusing that on the breaks in the BBC, there's a BBC advert talking about misinformation and that the BBC is the source of truth, that they're fighting the misinformation. Clive Marry is talking about, misinformation, disinformation will never take hold because BBC Verify is there and the BBC is there as a truth teller. Well, they haven't told the truth on this occasion by the sound of things. What do you think?
I think this is really serious. I am much more exercised by this story actually than any number of stories about celebrities behaving badly, with the exception of Hugh Edwards, of course. I've got a little bit tired of these awful stories of BBC celebrities doing the wrong thing, but this goes to the heart of what the BBC is all about. It's about the best, the most unimpeachable journalism, allegedly, except now we know it's not. And there have been many other instances of, BBC evidently being biased. I've written about it in articles about so-called BBC Verify. But this is one of the most absolutely glaring, isn't it? I mean, it's just indefensible.
The trouble is here, and this is getting worse as time goes on as well, and we've got more information from this 19-page report dripping out today on bias about the Middle East, which we've known has been a major issue in the BBC for some time. This is just going to continue, isn't it? What should the BBC do now?
Well, maybe the question is more, what should we do, we the taxpayer, do to the BBC?
Yeah.
And, I'm at the point of saying, I'm afraid, defund it. I've always sort of had almost a nostalgic feeling about the BBC. And as I live abroad, a lot of the time, you know, I hear people, I'm aware that overseas, probably not in America right now, but internationally, the BBC still is an incredible brand. And that has value, you know, for brand Britain. But when they do things like that, it really undermines the whole thing, and it undermines the whole justification for essentially forcing taxpayers to cough up this amount every year, whatever it is now, 180 quid or whatever it is, which we have no choice but to do, really, you know, because you pay that license fee, whether you're streaming any television, you have to pay that license fee. And it's just not really justifiable if the corporation is effectively lying to people.
Another story you've been working on for us, an exclusive story ran on Kevin O'Sullivan's story last night, and well done. A former migrant hotel manager arrested after 10 riot cops stormed his home, accused of stealing a 77p bowl of chicken pasta. Just talk us through this, Isabel, for people who may have missed this story so far.
10 police officers on my drive in 10 police officers.
Sure, 10.
The CCTV doesn't lie. 10 police officers in full riot gear. So I ran downstairs, opened the door. I was like, "Is everything okay?" And he barged through and he says, "Are you Adam?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You're under arrest for burglary." I said, "Burglary?" I said, "Never burgled anything in my life." And the accusation was taking some chicken pasta and not paying for it.
Was there a possibility to pay for it?
So there's no possibility to pay, no tills, nobody asking for money. I've ran the numbers through AI of how much it would cost with serving it for 300 people, and they said it would be about 77p.
77p. Isabel, why was Adam targeted in your view?
Adam was targeted for trying to tell the truth and trying to show the reality of what goes on behind closed doors in our migrant hotels. And for that crime, he now has the threat of being charged with burglary hanging over him on this pretext that he sat down with some migrants, having slipped into not the hotel that he used to work at, but into a couple of other migrant hotels. He was able to do that because he is of mixed heritage, and nobody really raised an eyebrow when he walked through the doors. It's not something I could do. I'd love to do that if I was allowed to, because I'd like to see what goes on. I'd like to sit there and watch for quite some time. And that's what he did. And that was not, you know, the authorities took a dim view of that, shall we say, because we, the taxpayer, are not supposed to know what goes on behind closed doors. And Adam, in an hour-long interview with me, we sat and filmed for an hour because he has so much to say about how it really is inside these facilities, how taxpayers' money is abused, and it's very measured about it. You know, there's a guy that actually enjoyed his job a lot of the time, found some of the asylum seekers he helped look after really very nice. But unfortunately, the truth is that many of them did behave very badly. There was a lot of abuse that he witnessed, whether it was violent brawls between asylum seekers from different nationalities, whether it was throwing food around, whether it was staging hunger strikes because they didn't think the food was quite up to their requirements, whether it was routinely refusing to clean their own rooms that they left in a state of squalor, whether it was quite openly drug taking in their hotel rooms and facing no consequences whatsoever for a lot of those things.
Isabel, thank you. You can see the next part of Isabel's interview on Kevin O'Sullivan's programme from 7 o'clock tonight. You can also catch up with what Isabel was reporting yesterday, her interview with Adam. That is on our website and indeed YouTube as well. A Greater Manchester police spokeswoman said, on Friday the 22nd of August, we arrested a 32-year-old man on suspicion of burglary following a reported incident on Friday the 1st of August in Trafford. He has been bailed pending further investigations. Well, lots more to come on that, as I say, on Kevin's programme with Isabel. That starts at 7 o'clock. We're going to talk more about that BBC bias story, the doctored Trump speech, the internal report on all of that. Stephen Pollard is a writer and former editor of the Jewish Chronicle, and he has written a fascinating response to it, where which is headlined simply, "It's now verified the BBC is biased." We'll find out what Stephen Pollard has to say in just a second here on Talk.
Previous governments have not adequately faced up to these challenges.
Seriously, love, can you get to the point?
Too often, political convenience has been prioritised over economic imperative. The decision to pursue a policy of austerity after the financial crisis dealt a hammer blow.
Hold her a minute. David Wooding, 10-second reaction. How long is it going to be before this woman who doesn't know how to add up just says, I'm going to raise your taxes?
Well, she's sort of breaking it to us gently.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Thanks to Jane, who says, so does that mean the Rachel Reeves House scandal has been forgotten, blaming everyone just like she did in her speech today? Can't wait for this government to fail. Paul in Manchester, good afternoon, Peter. Good afternoon, Paul. Rachel Reeves wants to cut the national debt. We can't even afford to pay the interest. Another person says, Tim in Brighton, how many times do we have to listen to this government talking complete garbage? Does anyone trust what they say? God help us, we are all doomed. Great show as ever. Margaret in Birmingham, Rachel again blaming everyone else for her incompetence. Boring waffle as usual. There she is again, treating us all like fools. She is covering her tracks. Craig says, I would love for Donald Trump to say, Squirmy Starmer, you either disband the BBC or face heavy tariffs. And regarding Rachel Thieves, I've heard a better speech by the hand dryer in a public toilet. Well, let's talk about the BBC now, because we can just remind ourselves of the whole controversy over a clip of Donald Trump. This was broadcast on Panorama. It's meant to be the flagship current affairs documentary series the BBC has. They're in a big row at the moment. This was apparently buried, covered up. This is what happened.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's different. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell.
Well, Stephen Pollard is a writer, former editor of the Jewish Chronicle. He's written an excoriating verdict on this in the Telegraph. And Stephen, maybe we could just start with the great paragraph you have in here about Clive Murray and the little clip, the little video that's going between so many different BBC programmes. Disinformation, you think you're winning, says Murray portentously as the clips roll. But wait, disinformation is up against the wondrous BBC, and the more you try to drown out reality, the harder we'll work to establish the facts. It's the pursuit of truth that gives us our calling. Hurrah for the BBC and its reporters, our fighters for truth. But the problem is that these rows about disinformation and not telling us the truth just keep coming. This one seems to be one of the most severe so far, Stephen.
I mean, the timing could hardly be more ridiculous, as it were, in that the BBC's launched this very glossy advert about how wonderful it is in terms of the way it deals with disinformation and fake news and AI and all that, with the last word of that video being trust is earned. Well, that's about the only bit of the video that's actually true. Trust is earned, and unfortunately the BBC is going about it in a way that all it's going to lead to is increasing distrust. I think there are two issues that I think we need to focus on, really. One, obviously, is the fakery itself, which shows, it's not even about the BBC being cavalier with the truth. That, we're both journalists. We know there are some journalists who are a bit too, how can one put it? They get invested in a story and they don't necessarily look at all different angles of it. And you could say that with some aspects of, those of those of us who scrutinise the BBC and talk about the BBC's bias and so on, sometimes I think that's the attitude. They only take one angle to a story, for instance, rather than looking at it in the round.
Yes.
But that's not the problem with this.
And in this case, it's Donald Trump is always wrong.
Well, but I think in this case, it's much worse than that, because it's not being cavalier about the truth. It's actually deliberately pushing out a distortion. You know, they went out of their way to edit this, not in a way, you know, in TV broadcasting, you can very easily edit speeches together in a way that's not misleading by making clear where the edit comes. You put a white line down so that people can see it. Just as in newspapers, when I used to edit a newspaper, and one of the things you do when you're looking at a long speech is you take the highlights from it and you make it clear to people that you're taking different bits from it. But the issue here is that they used software to elide those different elements of the speech to make it seem deliberately as though this was one long speech, which it wasn't. But worse in a way than that, even worse, because I think it shows that this isn't about bad actors, it's about some kind of internal problem with the BBC, is that when Michael Prescott, the advisor on journalistic standards, who was, it's important to point out, this was not some, you know, this is not the result of an investigation by a rival broadcaster or a newspaper. This is the result of the BBC's own advisor on editorial standards coming up with a 19-page report on what was wrong with this. When he put that to the BBC's head of news and to another senior BBC editorial director, they ignored him effectively. And was so angry about this that he then wrote to the BBC's chairman, Samir Shah, and said, look, what are you going to do about this? They're frustrating me. They're doing nothing about it. Surely you can see, his exact words were, this is setting a very dangerous precedent. And what did he get from Samir Shah, the chairman? Nothing. He ignored him too. And I think you know, you can call it a cover-up, you can call it an unwillingness to confront the BBC's problems, but whatever it is, it's bad, very bad.
And more today in regard to the bias we know exists, which is an anti-Israel bias, just as many, not all, but many in the BBC simply believe that Donald Trump is wrong about everything. We know that many in the BBC, including Jeremy Bowen, appear to believe that Israel is wrong about everything, and more evidence of that today. Yes,
there's that, but there's also, I think today as well, there's a lot of new, part of Michael Prescott's report's being released today, looking at BBC Arabic. My own former newspaper, the Jewish Chronicle, we focus quite a lot on the problems with BBC Arabic, where you would have literally supporters of terrorism who would act as freelancers and so on. And you would find that there'd be two different versions of stories that they put out, as it were. One in English, which was usually sanitized, and then one in Arabic, which was not sanitized, put it that way, and which was not just biased, but dangerous and deeply misleading and incendiary in some cases.
I worked for the BBC, and I was very proud to work for the BBC, both on Newsnight, on other programmes as well, in Washington and elsewhere. I worked for them for a cumulative total of about 3 years. I worked in Northern Ireland as well, although I was less proud of that particular programme that I worked on. What I would say is that I wouldn't dream of doing this, and I know lots of people I worked with who were of a very, very high standard of journalists. Some journalists I learned an awful lot from, and indeed continue to today in some cases. And this is not the whole of the BBC, but it is certainly enough of the BBC to make a mockery of so many other parts of it. I mean, I just wonder how on earth the BBC gets a handle on this bias issue, especially when there's obfuscation, when there's denial, when there is, Deborah Turness, for example, who's the BBC News chief, saying the most important thing to remember in the Gaza scandal, when the son of a terrorist was the person who was narrating a documentary, the most important thing to remember was that Hamas is two different organisations, as a political wing and a military wing, when actually everybody, and indeed anybody who knows anything about Hamas, will tell you that it's essentially all one organisation, and both sides of it anyway are prescribed under UK law.
Exactly that. I mean, this is, I think you get to the nub of it, really. The issue is, what do you do? The thing is, this is not some recent development. If this had been something that, had arisen in the last few years, then you could perhaps look at it and say, well, systemically, what's the problem? But it's not. I mean, I remember literally 25 years ago, Andrew Marr when he was the BBC's political editor. I think he just left, writing a piece about acknowledging the fact that there was an inherent bias in the BBC. The bias he referred to, I think quite rightly, was that it was a kind of left liberal bias. It wasn't a deliberate. The point is, it wasn't. The issue I think that's so pertinent about this is that it's deliberate, and there's a deliberate distortion. I think the more insidious bias, in a way, is. And it's not the BBC's fault, this in some ways, the kind of left liberal bias. It's the pool from which many journalists are drawn from. So they come into it with an instinctive idea that, profit is wrong, that, businesses exploit people, that all migration is good. We can go through a list of the various things. Yeah. But that informs their journalism. And, in a way, it's not the BBC's fault that they have journalists who think like that. The problem is that there's nothing there to correct it. Yeah. And indeed, one of the points that Michael Prescott makes in his memo today, or that was published today and yesterday, is that when it had, for instance, this hour-long panorama program on Donald Trump, which understandably and rightly scrutinized him, I think it's entirely right to do that. The point that Michael Prescott made, however, was that there was absolutely nothing doing the same for Kamala Harris. No. So it was as if, yes, Trump, obviously we're going to scrutinize him, but no, we're going to we'll leave her alone because she's obviously a decent candidate. Yeah.
And that is the problem that happens so often. Stephen, great to talk to you. I hope we speak again soon. That's Stephen Pollard there, who is a writer and former editor of the Jewish Chronicle. What do you think about this? 0344 499 1000. Pete says the BBC now trying to find excuses to get out of it. I hope Trump sues the BBC. Stephen says the BBC story is straight out of 1984. Talk about the Ministry of Truth. Time something was done about it. That's Stephen in Manchester. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss, including cops under fire over the suspect in the train attack. 24 hours of knife mayhem before he allegedly launched the Huntingdon train attack. We'll speak to a former Metropolitan Police Superintendent on all of that. The fallout, of course, from that continues. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
I've just been looking at my emails there during the break, and on BBC editorial standards, the Culture, Media and Sport Committee of Parliament has now written to the Corporation Chair over the panorama editing concerns and Middle East coverage as well. Dame Caroline Dinenage, who's the chairwoman of the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, this is in Parliament, says the BBC clearly has serious questions to answer regarding both its editorial standards and the way in which concerns are handled by senior management. The corporation must set the benchmark for accurate and fair reporting, especially in a media landscape where it is all too easy to find news presented in a less than impartial way. The committee needs to be reassured that those at the very top of the BBC are treating these issues with the seriousness they deserve and taking decisive steps to uphold the corporation's reputation for integrity and public trust. That's Caroline Dinage there, who is the chairwoman of the Culture, Media and Sport Committee. We'll see if we can get her on before the end of the programme now she has put out that statement on this ongoing BBC row. I want to talk now about the fact that there's a lot of criticism of the police. This is in regard to the 24 hours of knife mayhem that apparently and allegedly occurred before this suspect, who is now being charged, of course, with the Huntingdon knife attack before he allegedly launched that. This is the Halloween stabbings of two teens 100 miles apart, linked to the carnage. The knifeman is suspected to have begun his trail of violence at 10 past 7 on Friday morning by stabbing a 14-year-old boy in Peterborough city centre, where crowds of revellers were celebrating Halloween. A quarter of an hour later, he's feared to have terrorised staff and customers by brandishing a knife while drinking fortified wine at a barber's in Fletton. He is then alleged to have travelled to London by rail and stabbed a 17-year-old lad at a DLR train in East London. The same knifeman is then alleged to have gone back to Peterborough and appears to have returned to the same barbers. Despite the knife incidents, the suspect remained at large until after the train attack on 7:30 on Saturday. We know that charges have been brought in the Huntingdon case, so we'll be very careful about that. Kevin Hurley knows all about staying on the right side of the law because he's a former Metropolitan Police Superintendent. Kevin, what do you make of these allegations and the criticism of the police in regard to this, about why this suspect, who allegedly carried out these crimes, may have been allowed to stay at large for such a long time?
Well, I don't really think the criticisms are particularly valid. Another black man walking into barbers with a knife is not that unusual, and then 70, 80 miles away, another black man with a knife on the Docklands Light Railway. I mean, that's just normal business in the United Kingdom, and the possibility...
I mean, we need to be careful not to stereotype, Kevin, clearly, but those are crimes that do happen, and those crimes are obviously a matter of record in regard to some of the statistics, aren't they?
No, well, I'll stereotype because it's the business I've been in all my life, dealing with inner city street crime and knife crime in particular. And so I go back to my point, it's not unusual for a black man to stab someone on the Docklands Light Railway, and neither is it in Peterborough. The question is, would the police ever have linked it up? Well, the Docklands Light Railway is policed by the British Transport Police, and then also it's located within Metropolitan Police boroughs. It's just another incident, another day. I hate to say it in London, but that's how it is. The instance in Peterborough, yes, if the people had called it in quicker and there'd been a faster response, police might have got there, but my understanding is that the man walking about with a knife was not reported until a couple of hours later in Peterborough. Peterborough's not a very well policed area in terms of numbers of cops. They'd have been busy on Halloween. So I hate to say, but, you know, normal business, nothing to see. I don't really see this as a particular problem at all. And the only way around it, if people want a way around it, is we need to get several 100,000 more police officers, which is never going to happen. So all for what it is, you know, it's just unfortunate. This is obviously, we can't, of course, the man's been charged, and we can't say he's the same man doing these other offences, of course. But, you know, there are mentally disturbed people out on the street walking around with knives at this moment, and you know, let's get it in perspective. Docklands Light Railway, that's Transport Police within London area. Peterborough, okay, it's Cambridge Police, but who is ever going to imagine that someone's going to get on a train in the evening, Saturday evening, I think, in Doncaster or even Peterborough, and then start running amok? You know, it's just life. When you've got someone who's mentally disordered, this is going to happen.
Well, we don't know if that's the case in this case, and we'll be careful about that, Kevin. But in terms,
exactly.
Okay, tell me about how safe you think trains are in this country, because you've written about this.
Yeah, I mean, trains, broadly speaking, are a very safe means of transport, because you're far less likely to die on the train than you are on the road, because not many people die on the train. and they cover a lot bigger distances and carry millions of people every day. The issue on it is if you happen to be the unfortunates on a train when unpleasant yobbery or even some extreme violence starts to go on, the problem with it is you are effectively trapped. What can be done about it? I think it's a challenge. My view on this, and it remains the same, because I ran Operation Blunt 2 for the Metropolitan Police in 2008 when we had 27 youth murders in London, and 4 years later we'd got it down to 8, so we cut it by 70% over a period of 4 years.
Are you still there, Kevin?
Full scale, stop and search. Yes, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. The method we used on Operation Blunt 2 was dedicated and full-on stop and search in the problem areas of London, where they were focusing on known people or likely suspects out there. And I hate to say it tended to be black youth, because black youth are 30 times more likely to be murdered by a knife than white youth. That's the statistical fact. So because the police focused on that, it drove down the numbers of black youths being killed by black youths, which effectively saved about 100 black youths being murdered and probably 200 or 300 getting life imprisonment. So a lot of black mothers will have been grateful, even though they don't know what happened. So my point is, people need to bite the bullet and accept stop and search works. But the next problem is this. Because of the fact that activists and even the last Home Secretary, Theresa May, and God knows who, would claim that the Metropolitan Police and other police forces are racist and that they disproportionately stop black people.
And Baroness Louise Casey has said that very recently.
Well, good. Well, that shows how naive she is. So getting back to the point, the net result of it is that police officers who work the street, not the commissioners, not the assistant chief constables, not the superintendents, but the actual operators on the street, have voted with their feet. Which is why in London, for example, stop and search is down by 3/4. So we should not therefore be surprised that knife crime rises, because what stops young people carrying knives, black or white, is the thought that they could have consequences, that they could be caught with a knife and suffer significant penalties at court. Now, because people don't even go to prison after being found twice with a knife, there's not really much of a consequence there. And because police officers have backed off significantly from stop and search, and the reason for it is simple. Doing a stop and search, whether you're doing it with a black person or a white person, is necessarily an invasion of that person's privacy and will almost certainly cause a confrontation.
Yeah.
Now, it is a fact that particularly when you deal with young black youths, they will come to an engagement with the police with one of hostility. That's what happens. And so as a result...
Is that universally the case, Kevin?
Yes. I can only base it on 40 years in policing in London, but I'm a fairly good judge because I've worked the streets for that 30-odd years in London. And my whole family's in the police. So, the result of it is that then starts to become quite a hostile situation. The police officers themselves will become frightened. They then may call for help. Meanwhile, a big crowd will come around you of normally black youths, young black people starting to get involved. It becomes quite hostile. Then the arrests start getting made, people being injured, and then you get all the complaints.
That could happen with any arrest, Kevin, couldn't it? It's not specifically about black people.
No, I'm being specific here. Yes, it can happen with arrests of white people in problem areas. But be absolutely clear, if you work an area with high densities of Afro-Caribbean population, you will be surrounded and a hostile crowd will come around
All right. Kevin, thanks very much for your expertise this afternoon. That's Kevin Hurley there, former Metropolitan Police Superintendent. We're going to talk in just a second about another issue on the news agenda today. That is, of course, the scours deal. It's been delayed after Labour has pulled the bill because of an amendment. We'll talk to Rear Admiral Chris Parry about that in a second. Stay with us.
This is an attempt by Sinn Féin to rewrite history, to make the British Army the aggressors and the IRA paramilitaries somehow into freedom fighters. This Labour government has done a sordid backstairs deal with the Irish government in the Republic. Do they stand with army veterans, without whom there never have been a Good Friday Agreement, or do they stand with Sinn Féin? That is going to be a choice for them. We stand with the army veterans.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, as you're hearing in the ads there, from Monday the 1st of December, our talkTV app is on the move. All of your favourite shows and podcasts will continue over on the Talk app. So if you're watching or listening right now on the talkTV app, you'll need to delete it, download the Talk app from the App Store or Google Play. It's dead easy. I did it in 2 minutes yesterday, and you can do it too to make sure you don't miss any of your favourite programmes or presenters. Right then, I want to talk about the Scours deal now. This is so controversial, of course, and as we know, the Scours Islanders themselves just haven't been asked their opinion. And now Keir Starmer's Scours Islands deal has been delayed after the threat of defeat in the Lords. Ministers have been forced to pause legislation to ratify the treaty. A Conservative member of the House of Lords submitted an amendment to make the government consult the Scoursians before going ahead. You would have thought that would have been a fairly sensible thing to have done before now. Let's speak to Rear Admiral Chris Parry. He's a former NATO and Royal Navy commander. Chris, about time, really.
Yeah, this is great news. This is where the judiciary gets to put a check on the executive. I don't know anybody who thinks this Scours deal is a good deal. I think it's a bit of a scam myself, and it's probably the biggest strategic mistake I've seen in my career and lifetime.
Why a strategic mistake?
Well, Peter, I think the real issue lies in the strategic importance of the Scours Islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Of course, you've got Diego Garcia there, a major air and naval base. And the problem is that we are about to give it up to Mauritius, which has notoriously close ties to China, and we're going to pay for the privilege of doing it. One of the things I've been saying recently is that it took us £2 billion to recover the Falklands in 1982. We're about to pay out £37 billion just for the privilege of using something we already own.
Yes, it's a very good point. I mean, this could be a delay in what happens, but it won't stop it necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful, of course, that if it stops its passage through the Lords, then the government are going to take a second look at it. Certainly, if they look at their popularity ratings as a result of this decision, they'll make a political decision that the British people don't want this, and as a result, they won't want Labour to actually continue to make these sort of decisions on its behalf.
Chris, thank you. That's Rear Admiral Chris Parry, former NATO and Royal Navy commander. Sorry with a slight delay on the line there. Probably a slightly shorter interview than we usually would have done, but it is just tricky. Thank you to Amy, who's been in touch on Twitter, who says, on the panorama clip of Trump, what I would like to know is, can Trump sue the BBC for this? Did Tim Davie, the BBC Director General, know about the clip? Is Ofcom going to investigate this? Because if it was another station that did something like this, I'm sure they would be investigating. Jackie says Reeves has wiped 22 billion off the FTSE with her speech, and the pound down to a 7-month low. We are not being taxed, we're being robbed. All the money to go abroad. This global socialism will finish the West. Another person says next service men and women should be offered jobs to be guards on every train, tube and bus. They will have a job, a purpose, and not be on the streets. Let's speak about that BBC issue. Actually, I'll talk to Kevin in a second, but I just want to read out one more message from Stephen. He says, regarding the BBC, what they've done to Trump reporting is so dishonest to be utterly unbelievable. And what if BBC verify? A complete joke. What worries me is how many times have they done this previously to push their liberal ideology and false narrative? It is scary, says Stephen. Kevin's in North Yorkshire and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Kevin, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you make of the BBC row?
I think what it all proves, every comment that's been made this afternoon and through your programme, it proves that the BBC is unrecoverable. And what that means for me is what they should do is, you can't change people's ideologies. It's ingrained, and the whole ethos of the BBC is ingrained with this ideology. And I think what needs to happen is the BBC needs to be let go, and the BBC needs to find.
What do you mean by let go? What would that actually entail?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is it would forget the BBC. What you need to do is get rid of it, and if the public wants a public broadcaster, then we start again. Let the BBC go its own way. If it wants to be as left as it likes, it can be. It can go and be the mouthpiece for the Guardian, as far as I'm concerned. But at the end of the day, what then needs to happen is a new system is set up, because you're not going to change the ideology of these people. It's inset throughout the whole organisation. So cut it loose and start again.
Is there a difference, Kevin? Is there a difference between merely having an ideology, and we all have political opinions. I had political opinions when I worked at the BBC. I didn't act in them. I tried to be as scrupulously impartial as I possibly could be during my career there, and my career at other broadcasts as well, including ITV. I wonder, Kevin, is there a difference between having political opinions and acting on them, and actually doing things that are wrong, they're ethically wrong, to cut a clip, to do that? I mean, that is something that is so wrong, and anybody of any ideology should agree that it is totally wrong to change the meaning of what someone is saying by splicing together two bits of a clip.
No, I think the whole thing needs to be let go and start again. And what you'd look at is starting that structure by your recruitment and retention of the people that you recruit into the organisation, the standards that you set up. Let the whole thing go. It's a lost cause. It cannot be saved. There are too many people in it with too much of an ideological bent, and the whole thing just needs stopping dead. If they want to go and work and become a separate organisation and fund themselves and be left as they like, then let them do it. That's their prerogative. But if people want a public broadcaster, the only way we're ever going to get that of any quality again is by starting afresh, I feel.
Kevin, thanks for your thoughts. That's Kevin in North Yorkshire. There are just some polling that has just been released by YouGov. If you had to choose, which do you think is the best approach for improving public finances? 31% of people say tax increases, 43% of people say spending cuts, 27% of people don't know. That's sort of an interesting snap poll that has been put out after Rachel Reeves' speech this morning. We'll talk more about that in a second. We'll take more of your views as well. Jane says hopefully the Prime Minister will give full confidence in the BBC, then it will fail. Scrap the licence fee before Christmas. That would give families help with their energy bills. Mick in Wallington says, will our politically neutral police investigate the obvious corrupt reports by the BBC? Of course not. I don't think it's a criminal matter necessarily, Mick. Terry in Birmingham says that the next White House briefing they should humiliate the BBC in front of the world's media by ejecting the BBC correspondent from the room, citing this incident. And another person says the BBC must be made to pay dearly for misrepresenting Trump by reporters being banned from the White House and the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Lots to discuss on all of this on the BBC, on the Chagos Islands, and indeed on Rachel Reeves' dire and grim prognosis and indeed predictions for the budget. Ryan Saby, the Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, will join me in just a few minutes. We'll also be talking about Sir Alan Bates and the Post Office, Mr. Bates and the Post Office reaching a settlement over the scandal, and Dick Cheney dying aged 84. We'll look back at his legacy as well, and then get the sport too. All of that coming up in the next hour here on Talk, and I want to get your views on the air too. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text me at 72222. Let's get your voices on the air.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is Talk. It's just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Peter Cardwell and it's Talk Drive. Lots to discuss, including Rachel Reeves, her budget betrayal, the fact that income tax, VAT and national insurance, is she going to touch them or are they going to go up? It certainly looks at least one of them will be touched and will go up in the budget. An extraordinary speech this morning. We'll talk all about that. We'll also talk about Mr. Bates in the post office, Sir Alan Bates now reaching a settlement. Dick Cheney has died as well, the former Vice President of the United States under George W. Bush. Many thought he was the power behind the throne in that administration. We'll talk about the sport as well, and universities in a free speech row over the demands of Israeli academics. Very, very interesting. Nadia Sawala as well, another rant on air, and we'll talk about that. She said it was an excellent interview that Louis Theroux did with the Bob Villain star Pascal Robinson Foster. Lots to discuss here on Talk between now and 7 o'clock. I want to make sure you get involved. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send us a voice note 0344 499 1000, the same number for WhatsApp text messages, and the phone number is the same one too as well, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 7. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, earlier today, Rachel Reeves in Downing Street, the Chancellor, set out the choices she faces as Chancellor.
When I was appointed Chancellor, people put their faith in me to take our country forward. Not to be swayed by political convenience. Not to always do what is popular, but to do what is right. At the budget, I will continue to deliver on the priorities of the British people. Cutting NHS waiting lists, cutting the national debt, and cutting the cost of living. And in the context of the long-term challenges on our productivity and heightened global uncertainty, any Chancellor of any party would be standing here today facing the choices that I face.
Rachel Reeves also spoke about the burden of national debt.
The UK's national debt now stands at £2.6 trillion, equivalent to 94% of GDP. Before the mini-budget, our borrowing costs were in the middle of the pack compared to other advanced economies. But now we have the highest borrowing costs of any G7 country. Today, 1 in every £10 of taxpayers' money is spent on debt interest. Not paying that debt down, but just paying the interest to our creditors. At the budget last year, I changed the fiscal rules to strike a careful balance, to invest more in capital alongside a credible plan to grow our economy and bring debt down within this Parliament. That was the right decision to break the cycle of low productivity and low growth.
Leslie says Reeves didn't deliver a speech, she delivered waffle, word soup, obfuscation and excuses. Leslie's texted in on 87222 to let us know her opinion. What do you think? You can let us know on that same number, or 0344 499 1000. The leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, wasn't impressed. This is what she said.
The Chancellor's speech was one long waffle bomb. A laundry list of excuses. She blamed absolutely everybody else for her own choices, her own decisions, her own failures. She claims she will focus on the priorities of the British public. Whose priority is it to pay more tax? It is basic economics that if you tax something, you get less of it. Remember those graduates who aren't finding work? Some people are blaming AI. It's not AI's fault. You can draw a direct line between what Rachel Reeves did in the budget last year and the dire prospects that many of those graduates are facing now.
Ryan Saby is the Deputy Political Editor and indeed the Economics Editor of The Sun. Ryan, good to have you on the programme. How likely do you think it is that Rachel Reeves is going to raise taxes based on the speech this morning?
I think the fact is that she's going to raise taxes. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think the numbers just add up to the fact that she's going to have to find several, different pots of money to try and plug the nation's finances. I think the big question is this financial hole, the black hole that we've been speaking about for several weeks now, is it big enough that she has to pull the lever and break one of the manifesto pledges? Does she go for national insurance? Does she go for VAT? Or does she go for income tax? I think that's the big question. I feel like the Treasury, the Chancellor haven't made those final decisions yet. But what this morning did was pave the way, lay that groundwork for the possibility of one of those big levers being pulled, and it seems that the most likely one is income tax. Let's wait and see. There's 3 weeks to go. There's still a few bit of to and fro between the Treasury and the independent watchdog on this. So let's just wait and see.
She said, I don't want to necessarily do what's popular, I want to do what's right. Many people would believe what is right is keeping her promises and saying, if you make a solemn promise not to raise these 3 taxes, which I think was pretty stupid in the original instance, surely if she goes back on that promise, she will lose so much credibility as Chancellor. And we've seen the markets reacting very badly today, haven't we?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you look at the pound, the value against the dollar was at its lowest since April. So that's one thing to bear in mind. But I think the language that the Chancellor used this morning, each of us must do our bit. Well, that is very, very stark and different language to what she used just a few weeks ago. I was out in Washington, D.C. with her at the IMF at one of their meetings, and she was talking about how the fair share of tax must be paid by the wealthy, those with the broadest shoulders. Well, that is very, very different to what she said today, saying that each of us must do our bit, which sort of suggests that will fall on working people. For example, and there was that, again, like you say, that solemn promise during the election manifesto that working people wouldn't be affected. I think the interesting thing will be, what is the definition, and we've had this for the last 18 months since they came to power, what is that definition of working person?
And when you say things, Ryan, like we must all do our bit, I mean, many people feel as if we are doing our bit because the taxes that we pay are the highest as a proportion of what the country makes since the Second World War, and Labour have put up taxes even from the high burden that the Tories had when they left office. And actually, from Rachel Reeves's perspective, there's more that she can do, certainly, but it's going to make life more difficult for people, isn't it?
Yeah, you just look at, I asked her this morning about the cost of living crisis. She said that was going to be one of her key priorities. Well, is she actually going to make a material difference to people's lives, or is it just going to be sort of tinkering around the edges? I think one of the big focuses of the budget will be to try and bring down food prices. Now, one of the things that she talked about was making sure that supermarkets don't get hit by increased business rates. She hinted very strongly at that. But is that really going to have much of a knock-on effect when people go around the supermarket filling up their trolley and having to pay their bill? One other thing that she hinted at was energy bills coming down. Would VAT be taken off that? Possibly saving households around £86 a year. Now, these are not to be sniffed at, but are they really going to make much difference? When you look at food inflation going, about 6%. Household bills, going through the roof, they're welcome. But as I say, are they going to make a big difference?
When you were there this morning in Downing Street, Ryan, were the questions that Rachel Reeves were asked, were there many about this rental row? Did that come up very much? Did she deal with that?
So again, about the red...
Yes.
Sorry, the Red Bull...
sorry, the rental row. The rental row.
The rental row. It came up once. There was one question that came up, and she batted it off very quickly. She didn't want to be drawn on it. The one thing that she did say, there was an exchange of letters between herself and the Prime Minister. The independent ethics advisor also got involved, and she closed it down very quickly. So she wanted to make this very much focused on the budget and not bring in any sort of personal controversy. So I think if the press conference had gone on a little bit longer and everyone had got a question, perhaps that she may have come unstuck on that, but she didn't want to dwell on it.
Tell me about this Scours deal as well, delayed after this amendment. What will happen now, do you think, in the House of Lords, and will this simply delay it, or will the government pause for thought on actually consulting the Scours Islanders?
Yeah, I think what will happen here is that I think that a form of words will be used to actually get this piece of legislation through. Now, it seems like the Chagossians will have to be consulted, because it looked like the Liberal Democrats were going to vote with the Conservatives and defeat the government, because Labour don't actually have a majority in the House of Lords. So I think there will be some consultation, and eventually it will be got through. But this hold-up could be for weeks, possibly months, going to the new year. So again, let's just wait and see what happens on this.
Ryan, thank you. That's Ryan Saby there, Deputy Political Editor and Economics Editor of The Sun, joining us today. Ian is in London and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Ian, you're very welcome to the programme. What did you make of what Rachel Reeves said?
Well, I want to know, when somebody says I made the right choice, right? Did I have a vote in what she did? No, she made it. So all of this, if she wants to make a choice of what she's doing with the budget, why doesn't she ask us all, what do you want me to do?
What do you want her to do, Ian? What do you think she should do?
I think she shouldn't put more tax on everybody. The more tax they put on more people, they don't spend money, the economy's not going to grow. Every person that's got any sense knows that, but it just seems that she'll do anything she wants to do, because she buggered it up last year, and she's buggering it up this year. Sorry if I'm French again. I shouldn't say that.
That's okay. I mean, we'll veer away from that kind of language, but nonetheless, a lot of people do feel that is what Rachel Reeves has done with her management of the economy.
Yeah, because she just doesn't seem to have a clue. It's like the same business with her with the property.
Yeah.
She doesn't follow the advice that the estate agents gave her, and then she doesn't even properly say sorry. It just seems that all of Labour, they think, oh, we're tax, because that's what the people want us to do. But the people don't. They want her to give more money so they can actually live.
Yeah,
and they're not living. It's not like that poor lady that was on last week with Julia that just doesn't understand her own country. She doesn't go outside the door.
I think a lot of people feel the same way, Ian, thank you. And Richard says, how can she stand there, how can Rachel Reeves stand there and waffle and blame everyone but themselves, and stand there and say that all when wasting billions on net zero, illegal migrants and foreign aid? But we have to suffer. It is a liar's lair. If they actually wanted to do the right thing, she cut the above. Must think that the British people are thick. Well, we are not, says Richard. Matt's in Cheshire and has some thoughts on this. Matt, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, very good afternoon, Peter.
Hi there.
If they do raise taxes, it's the final nail in an already half-buried coffin. They fall from one calamity into the next, like some kind of Keystone Cops, sort of Charlie Chaplin. And Rachel Reeves, you know my views on Keir Starmer, but Rachel Reeves is equally as shocking. Like a blend of an AI voice and a marionette.
This is a minor point, Matt, but you will have noticed this. Do you think, I just noticed in that first clip, she seems to be talking, like her delivery seems to be quite similar to Starmer's now. Did you notice that?
I have noticed that, yeah. It's almost like they've got the same sort of trainer or something like that.
I'd ask for my money back, quite frankly.
I've got a little joke that you might appreciate. It's an economic policy. With a brain that small, she should have plenty of headroom.
Oh, I see what you did there. Well, actually, I mean, she may well point to another figure, which is that Labour have actually gone up 3 points in the opinion polls, in one opinion poll anyway, to 23%. Now, Reform UK are still 4 points ahead, but that seems to be narrowing. The Tories at 16 and other parties around 16, 15 as well. So maybe the public doesn't agree with you, Matt.
I think there'll be little lulls in where I am. We've had a Labour MP for decades and a Labour council for 47 years, and Reform are polling at 47% here. and Labour are polling at 15%. So maybe if you ask a lot of people in London, or the outs in, it all depends where polling is done.
Well, it's meant to be balanced across the country and all the rest of it. YouGov's a member of the polling council and all the rest of it. But Matt, certainly, I know what you mean. I hear your frustration. Certainly, what do you think is going to happen on the 26th of November?
She'll just do what she like a sterner version of today. You're going to have to feel some pain. There might be like a veiled apology that we wouldn't come back with the begging bowl, but here we are again.
Because of global factors and things that are out of my control, etc. on the inheritance from the Conservatives and the legacy of Brexit and da.
That is just driving people insane because, the British people are fair-minded. You can blame the Tories for a while.
Yeah, but it's been 16 months now. It's been 16 months. Let's get a grip here. Matt, thank you. Thanks for your thoughts, Matt. Appreciate that. That's Matt in Cheshire. You want to add your thoughts between now and 70344 499 1000. We're going to talk in a second about the Post Office campaigner Alan Bates, who's agreed a multi-million-pound compensation figure from the Post Office, I would say the Home Office, the Post Office. We'll talk to the former Post Office Minister, Paul Scully. He'll be with us in just a second. Get your views on it too. 0344 499 1000.
Anthony Williams, who we now know has been charged with 11 counts of attempted murder, has now been charged with a further account, allegedly stabbing a 14-year-old boy the day before this attack. Cambridgeshire Constabulary said the teenager was attacked in Peterborough on Friday, what is believed to be one of 3 knife-related incidents carried out by the 32-year-old. The force said he suffered minor injuries and was later discharged. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, of course, we all remember the post office scandal and the fact that 20 years ago, Alan Bates, now Sir Alan Bates, started campaigning for justice for victims of the Horizon scandal. It led to a group of 555 sub-postmasters and postmistresses launching a landmark legal action against the post office. Between 1999 to 2015, more than 900 sub-postmasters were wrongly prosecuted after the faulty Horizon IT system indicated shortfalls in their accounts and basically accused them of stealing money, which they were not doing. The problem was the computer system. 1.23 billion had been awarded by September this year, so 2 months ago, to more than 9,100 sub-postmasters. We now know that Sir Alan Bates himself has settled. There seems to be an end to certainly his compensatory battle himself. Paul Scully is the former Post Office Minister. Paul, thank you for joining me this evening. Alan Bates hasn't told us what the figure is, but we think it's in 7 figures. That's what's been reported. And Paul, that would appear to be something of a fair figure for him. There are so many others, of course, and their battle continues.
Yeah, afternoon to you, Peter. Great to see you. Look, there is little that we should be holding back from doing anything for Sir Alan and his cohort of campaigners, because they have been wronged by the state. People were put in prison by the state, by state-owned operation rather than not the state directly, but nonetheless it feels like it's the state. They were, some people driven to health problems, to marital splits, and pariahs in their communities. And what Sir Alan has done on top of that to really put his life on hold beyond what he could have accepted other things for, to work for the whole group, not just himself, and is to be absolutely commended. He deserves every penny and more that he's getting.
What did you do as Post Office Minister to try to sort this out?
So I had at least the good fortune of coming in after the group litigation order. If you remember the drama on ITV that Sir Alan was right at the centre of, there was a court case at the end. I came in as postmaster shortly after, so I had about 1,000 pages worth of judgment from there. And although civil servants were saying, well, look, that's been sorted by the courts, we really should let it lie now, I didn't feel we could. This is a human cost, it's a human story. So I set up the inquiry and I set up the compensation schemes that finally Sir Alan and others, there's still too many that haven't, have had some benefit from.
It's taken him quite a long time to settle, and he initially said the first offer of redress in January last year was rejected. He said it was cruel and derisory. Is that compensation scheme actually working properly? He's accepted the negotiation, but there are some, of course, as you say, who've been through all those kind of issues that may not have the fighting spirit, that may simply accept the first offer that has been given to them.
Yeah, I think it's been improving over the years. When ministers have realised this is taking way too long, it's bogged down in process, it's gradually been improving. The inquiry itself, one of the recommendations was to reopen what they call the historic shortfall scheme. So people that didn't necessarily go to prison, didn't go through that court case, maybe actually just covered the shortfall themselves, but still ended up with a financial loss, were able to apply in that. Like that sort of PPI scheme that was doing the rounds a few years ago, that you would realise you had a loss, you'd apply to the scheme themselves. They reopened that because lots of people didn't know and didn't approach, get the compensation that they needed at the time. So, but it's really slow. It's really slow.
And why do these things take so long? We hear about people caught up in the blood scandal as well, who were given infected blood. They are taking such a long time, and indeed people are dying. People are dying, of course, in the post office scandal as well, and not getting the compensation that they deserve, especially when their reputations have been trashed. Their health, in many cases, has been trashed as well and caused beyond repair. Why does it take so long, especially when it's so open and shut in so many cases?
Well, look, at the beginning, there was a lot of people covering themselves, thinking this cannot be happening. The post office can't have done all of these.
But now, Paul, I mean, I get all that historically, but now, when you've got something
But it was inertia. Then it was inertia kicking in after that, and just to actually get the levels of compensation that we needed support from the Treasury. I had to go to the Treasury almost cap in hand, because otherwise the Post Office did not have enough money in the coffers to actually pay for this. So we can't have a bankrupted, amazing institution despite this recent reputational issue. You know, the Post Office has been going on since Henry VIII, so we can't let it let it fall foul of this, which is, as I say, a human situation. But inertia kicked in, and government always travels slowly. So you need ministers to hold their feet to the fire and really push on. And you need great campaigners like Lord Arbuthnot and Karen Jones, who was then in the opposition for the Labour Party, now obviously in the governing party, that are really, and others that have been really following their constituencies' issues and pushing hard in Parliament.
When do you think, I mean, it's a slightly how long is a piece of string kind of question, but when do you think we'll be able to draw a line under this and say the Post Office scandal happened, it was dreadful, it shouldn't have happened, now everybody's been compensated, we can draw a line under this and actually move on? Yeah, I don't know what the percentages are at the moment about the Post Office that have postmasters that have received compensation. There are plenty more, though, that need to have better compensation settlements given to them. But beyond that, then you actually need to start saying, well, hold a sec, what about Fujitsu? What about who provided the software? What about the Post Office executives who are covering this up? You need a sense of accountability as well as the compensation, which at the end of the day, I know it's glib, but it's only money. We're literally absolutely ruin these people's lives. Money only so much. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Paul. Thank you. Paul Scully there, former Post Office Minister. And Simon in Canterbury's been in touch and says, hi, Cardi P. Hi, Simon. It's all very well Sir Alan Bates agreeing a figure in his compensation battle, but how long will this fine fella have to actually wait for a payment? And how long will it take for compensation to follow the rest of the victims? Well, I did, I suppose, cover a little bit of that with Paul Scully, but it's taking far too long. I think we can both agree, Simon. Thank you for that. Another texter says, I wonder if the Labour Party realise that it will be a one-term wonder, so we'll spend on the ridiculous agenda, knowing it'll be so. Well, of course, they're spending our money. Anthony says the welfare bill has to be drastically cut, Peter, and net zero needs to be abolished. Thank you to Andy in Darlington, who says Reeves' speech was nothing but a delusional denial of the effects that her and Labour's policies have had. The shocking state of their so-called leadership of this country has been devastating, and anybody who agrees and supports a remedy has to share the responsibility for the suffering they are causing. We're all doomed. Anyway, great show. Thanks, Andy. Mark in Sheffield says, evening, Peter. Evening, Mark. Rachel from accounts still not getting it, is she? So the unions get a pay rise, MPs get a pay rise, doctors get a pay rise, illegal migrants get 5-star treatment, and no end of funds. Shéagos gets given away to a country that never ever owned it. Ukraine gets more money, and the list goes on. But the taxpayer, what's left of us, as people are losing jobs daily due to the employed national insurance, where does it end? She really has no idea how to sort this mess out, says Mark. If you have ideas, if you think you know what the Chancellor should do, you let me know. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk in just a second about another politician. Dick Cheney, the former US Vice President, has died at the age of 84. He was a pivotal figure in US politics. He'd been around a number of administrations, the Reagan administration, and of course as Vice President to George W. Bush. Would they necessarily have gone to war in Iraq without Dick Cheney? That's a question I think that might well be asked today as news of his death and reaction to it filters through. If you have some comments on that, please do let me know what they are. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Let's talk now about Dick Cheney, one of the most controversial politicians of the last, well, my political lifetime, certainly. Also someone who really did get things done. The statement from George W. Bush, who was president when Dick Cheney was vice president. Of course, Dick Cheney had many roles. He was White House Chief of Staff, he was Defence Secretary, he worked, I think, for 5 different presidents, actually. George W. Bush said, "The death of Richard B. Cheney is a loss to the nation and a sorrow to his friends. Laura and I will remember Dick Cheney for the decent, honourable man that he was. History will remember him amongst the finest public servants of his generation, a patriot who brought integrity, high intelligence and seriousness of purpose to every position I should say, he held. Dick's love for America was second only to his family. Laura and I have shared our deepest sympathies with Vice President Cheney's wife Lynn and their daughters and grandchildren, of whom he was so deeply proud." Well, let's just remind ourselves of what Dick Cheney said. One of the many, many things he said about the Iraq War. This was in 2004.
What we did in Iraq was exactly the right thing to do. If I had it to recommend all over again, I would recommend exactly the same course of action. The world's far safer today because Saddam Hussein is in jail, his government's no longer in power, and we did exactly the right thing.
Dick Cheney, who has died at the age of 84. Well, Michael Yaki is a US political analyst, a Democrat, a former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. Michael, you had some dealings with Dick Cheney. Tell us what he was like.
Well, I'll tell you something, Peter. If you had asked me 10 years ago about his passing, I would have come on to say I'd come to bury Dick Cheney, not to praise him. But things have changed since then. I mean, he was someone with whom my former boss, Nancy Pelosi, sparred with many times. We would, and again, he was sort of the old school politician, someone who you would fight with, in a policy level to the death, and sometimes fairly or unfairly. It's as if you were watching an old episode of Suits and watching people scream at each other all the time and then go out to dinner afterwards. That's kind of like what politics used to be. And Dick Cheney was someone who exemplified that, albeit, for some people, including the former head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time, Colin Powell. There's some, I think, concern about the fact that we were led into the Iraq War under the misinformation that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. I think that kind of cloud still hangs over Dick Cheney, notwithstanding the fact that, as you said, he served as Chief of Staff to Gerald Ford. He was the Secretary of Defense for Bush 1. He was the Vice President for George W. Bush. His daughter succeeded him in Congress. He's someone who is one of those people who believed in public service and gave his all in it, and in the end, exemplified that by basically stating that he could not support Donald Trump because of what he meant to American democracy, and that was, I think, one of the more interesting and courageous things that he did at the twilight of his career.
So your view of him changed because he spoke out against Donald Trump?
Well, it's not really a view has changed. He is someone with whom you did battle, and you may think that he did it unfairly with the Iraq War, but there was no one could question his loyalty, his patriotism, or his respect for the institutions of power in the United States, and the fact that there is a separation of powers and how our democracy is supposed to function. And I think that he was true to that throughout the Trump years and to the end. But I think that he's someone who is certainly for conservatives exemplified the best of what a hawk used to be and could be. And whether you agree with him or not, he was someone who gave his all in public service to our country.
Given that he was against Trump and given that he actually, as a Republican, ended up voting for Kamala Harris, do you see that as a change in his views, or do you actually see a line through in terms of his view and his commitment, as you say, to patriotism and public service? What would you... Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Peter. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Not at all.
It's just that it is a through line. I mean, you can quarrel with his policies, you can quarrel with his politics. You can say that on the political spectrum, he and I would be, on opposite ends of the spectrum. But you cannot question his patriotism. You cannot question his respect for the institutions of democracy. When he would not fail to show up if he was subpoenaed. He was someone who understood that Congress had a role to play in the government. He understood that if the Supreme Court said you couldn't do something, you couldn't do something. I mean, there were actions that they took, and yes, sometimes each administration will try and cross that line, but then when the courts say no, they say no. And he was someone who played within the rule book of American democracy. So I don't think that in his statements against Trump, he was doing anything but being true to the rule book of American democracy and what he saw as a threat to that institution and to those things that guided him throughout his political career.
How wily a character was he? How much did he know the institutions of power and how to exercise that power? Because, I mean, the story I love about him is when he was asked by George W. Bush, find me someone who can be my vice presidential candidate. And then he sort of went, maybe it should be me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's ambition was never a problem for Dick Cheney. But that's not a bad thing. I mean, you and I both know that wanting to do something and thinking that you're the person who can do it is not a bad thing. Now, if you think that you're better than anyone else and you think that you don't need to listen to anyone else, now that sort of takes it to the extreme. But this is someone who was ambitious, who believed that he could do something for his country, believed that he could be someone who could make a contribution. So, wily, cunning, ambitious, it's one of those things that you have to admire about someone who grew up in a very small state, in a very small community, and nevertheless sort of rose to the pinnacles of power in the United States. It's part of the American dream. It's part of what exemplifies any person in the United States to think that they can be the president or they could be elected to Congress. He exemplified that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, remember, this is the guy who conned Congress, if you want to say it, in terms of the whole WMD thing. He knew, how to manipulate government, he knew how to manipulate power, and he made no bones about it.
Michael, thank you. That's Michael Yaki there, US political analyst and former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. We'll talk about the sport in just a second. Stay with us here on Talk.
if you can find ways of letting the private sector breathe, not having them spending nearly all of their time complying with rules, then you can get an awful lot done. Growth goes up, more people are employed, more people are getting pay rises, more people are moving into higher skilled jobs, and suddenly the money does start to flow into the exchequer. Or if not suddenly, over a year or two, you're in a much, much brighter position. So I'm very keen to hear what Reform are going to do on that. And I think they're likely to stay consistent on that.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Some breaking news now on Talk, and that is that all flight operations are being held at Reagan National Airport. That's in Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C., Reagan Airport, while passengers on a United Airlines flight are being offloaded and bused to the terminal. The airport says it'll provide more information as it becomes available. We'll keep you updated with the latest verified information. There's lots of stuff going around social media at the moment. We're going to be sure what is correct. What we know at the meantime is that all flight operations are being held at Reagan National Airport in Virginia, just outside Washington DC, about 4 miles outside Washington DC. I'm actually flying into it myself in a few weeks' time, while passengers on a United Airlines flight are being offloaded and bused to the terminal. I'll bring you any updates on that between now and 7 o'clock. I'm sure Kevin O'Sullivan will talk to you more about that as well. Right then, let's talk about the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Dean Scoggins is with us, Deputy Head of Sport at The Sun. How are you doing, Dean?
I'm
you
good.
well?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
It's a massive talking point about fans, but some love it, some hate it. What the Premier League's top scorer this season has come out in favour of, VAR. What has Erling Haaland actually said?
Yeah, it's incredible, and we'll be pegging him Erling Haaland tomorrow morning in the paper.
Like it?
Yeah, as you say, 98 goals he scored in 107 games, 13 in 10 this season, and yet the stat that he keeps an eye on is offsides, and he prides himself on the fact he's only been offside 18 times in 3.5 years, which is, for a striker, absolutely remarkable.
In fairness to him, I have been offside on fewer occasions, probably by not playing football.
Maybe me as well, yeah.
Yes.
But because he says if he knows he's timing his run perfectly, and VAR's the only way, to show that. So incredibly, a professional footballer who hates to be offside and therefore likes VAR. It doesn't.
How controversial is this, Dean?
Yeah.
What are people going to be saying?
I've never heard of any other footballer so far say they like VAR. No, a few after a goal's been given in their favour by VAR, but in general, and I tell you what, as a match-going fan, I absolutely despise it, because you celebrate a goal and then you look at the screen and it says checking goal, and you have to wait to see if you're allowed to celebrate again. So yeah, I'm not sure many are going to agree with Erling Haaland, but he's obviously a freak of nature as it is, with his incredible goal-scoring record.
It's a big week of Champions League action. Arsenal, Spurs and Liverpool are in action, but Chelsea, they play tomorrow, could have one of their star players back soon. Tell us about this.
Yeah, good news for Chelsea fans is that Enzo Maresca, the manager, thinks that Cole Palmer will be back ahead of schedule. So they were, potentially being out until after Christmas, different things talking about December, but now Maresca's saying that they play Barcelona and Arsenal in the last week of this month, and he hopes to have Palmer back for the Barcelona game, which is obviously amazing news. They've had quite an up and down season, Chelsea, but Cole Palmer's their sort of star attacking player. Groin injury, only 4 appearances so far this season. He's not in Karabag, which is where they are at the moment. They've been flying to Baku, the longest flight in Europe. But yeah, he won't be back for that, but some good news for Chelsea fans there, definitely.
Tell us as well about the cricket. The Ashes fast approaching. Talisman captain Ben Stokes committed to his future in the role. Obviously the first test in Australia later this month.
Yeah, I'm already starting to plan my sleep patterns to try and stay awake for the Ashes, because it's as a huge cricket fan, it's obviously a couple of weeks away. November the 21st is the first test, and Ben Stokes will be fit for that. But most people, myself included, thought that this was probably going to be his last big series and maybe a swan song. But no, a new contract, 2 years, and so could even look at the Ashes in 2027, which will be quite exciting, back on home soil. But let's hope they're coming back with the Ashes in a couple of weeks.
Dean, thank you. That's Dean Scoggins there, Deputy Head of Sport at The Sun. Plenty more, of course, online at thesun.co.uk/sport and in the paper tomorrow. We're going to keep talking about the big political issues of the day, not least what the Chancellor has said. Let's just remind ourselves of what Rachel Reeves said earlier.
When I was appointed Chancellor, people put their faith in me to take our country forward. Not to be swayed by political convenience. Not to always do what is popular, but to do what is right. At the budget, I will continue to deliver on the priorities of the British people. Cutting NHS waiting lists, cutting the national debt, and cutting the cost of living. And in the context of the long-term challenges on our productivity and heightened global uncertainty, any Chancellor of any party would be standing here today facing the choices that I face.
We'll talk about Rachel Reeves more in a second, but we can now report that there is a bomb threat on a United Airlines flight which has shut down Reagan National Airport. All flights in and out of Washington DC's Reagan National Airport. There are of course a number of different airports in Washington DC. Dulles as well generally deals with international flights. Reagan National Airport generally deals with internal flights within the UK. It's not exclusive, but that is often the way. They're all halted at Reagan due to a bomb threat on a flight. A security emergency was issued at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. That will have been, I think, 4:30 this afternoon if my timings are correct, although there's some problems with the time has changed. I'll check that out. That has had an impact on a flight that landed from Houston, which was quickly surrounded by emergency vehicles. Houston in Texas, of course. Travellers stranded on the runway said there was a bomb threat on a United flight that landed from Houston, which was quickly surrounded by emergency vehicles. Flight radar around the airport captured several planes circling the airport during the ground stop. Others have been diverted to other locations. We know, of course, that Dulles Airport is not far away, so I'd imagine they would have been diverted to Dulles Airport outside Washington as well. A spokesman for the airport said all flight operations are being held at Reagan National while passengers on a United Airlines flight are being offloaded and bused to the terminal. We'll provide more information as it becomes available. Clearly, this is a developing story, but what we know is that all flights in and out of Washington DC's Reagan National Airport are being halted due to a bomb threat on a flight. It's actually in Virginia. It's a couple of miles outside Washington DC. The district, of course, is very small. Many people, I used to live there myself, many people live and commute from Virginia and Maryland, and Reagan National Airport, one of the main airports there. We'll bring you the very latest on that as we get more information into the Talk newsroom. Let's talk about Rachel Reeves. Jill is in Cornwall and has some views on Rachel Reeves, what she was saying this morning. Jill, good to talk to you again. How are you doing? What would you like to say?
Well, I'm fine, Peter. I'm sorry. I'm being a bit probably sarcastic, but what she needs to do is to get out. She needs to give up her job. She's not doing the job. That's the thing. I just find that everything that she does and says, I have no confidence in at all. And she needs to hand over the rails to somebody. Well, is there anyone? There's no one.
Well, this is it, Jill, because do you have confidence in anyone in Labour to get this right? They're the government. They're democratically elected.
I know they were democratically elected. I think a lot of people thought that by voting for someone other than the Conservatives, that they would get that party in. But as the way our voting system goes, it was obvious it was going to be Labour that's in there. I'm sorry, I just feel that we don't have a competent government.
We can't say that. We don't want to say things like that. Jill, what would you like Rachel Reeves to do?
Well, I'd like her to do something that benefited this country and the people who are putting money in the pocket and the purse for her to be able to do what she's doing. The taxpayer of this country is working hard and suffering as a result of what she's doing. And anyone else within this country who's not putting into the pot, they're the ones that are benefiting. And for some reason or the other, it's people outside of the government that can see what's happening, the people in the government that have their hands on the purse and everything else, that seem to not see what the rest of us see.
Jill, thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry, Peter.
Don't worry. No, Jill, their passions are running high. I totally understand. Jill, thank you there for that. That's Jill in Cornwall. Jane says the Chancellor saying doing things right, taking money from pensioners for winter. Yes, the Chancellor, we will never forget that. Annie in Tring says, can't Donald Trump sue the BBC for defamation of character? They wouldn't have a leg to stand on. Great show as always. Mandy says, waffle bomb. I bet that gets in the Oxford Dictionary for next year. That's what, of course, Kemi Badenoch said about what Rachel Reeves was saying. Alison says Starmer should sack her, resign and call a general election. She should also have to put on his big boy pants and sack Miliband when he reshuffled. Another Alison says the taxpayer should be paying the sub-postmasters for jitsu and the people who covered it up. I think, personally, says Alison, talking about sub-postmaster Bates and others. Kath in Lincolnshire says, not being an expert in economics and politics, hence the question, but has Reeves tried to flatten any market reactions to your tale of woe on the 26th to try to hide and minimise the fallout? And Dawn in Chancellor says, hi Peter, I watched Rachel Reeves' speech. She was so wooden she needed a carpenter. I wonder who wrote it. Kevin is in Dorset and wants to talk about Donald Trump and the BBC. Kevin, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi Peter. Yeah. So catching hold of this headline, I think it basically tells the people of the country that for a long time we suspected the BBC are left and not telling the news as it should be. This gives us total and utter proof of that, because Panorama is scrutinised at a very high level with various, as people have said earlier, lawyers and various other people who are involved in it when they're doing these programmes and when they're putting out this information. So they're not fit for purpose, the BBC. Donald Trump, if he decides to sue them, well, good luck to him, he should do, because they've not just interfered and brought, you're looking at a libel case, but we're looking at interference of a president. And to do something that massive, if this was done by Russia to us, this would be absolutely catastrophic.
Do you know what, Kevin? It makes me think of what I do as a broadcaster sometimes, not to be all sort of, let's bring this back to me, but the point is, when you're accessing media, when someone's telling you what the news is, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's the BBC, whether it's Talk, no matter what it is, you've got to trust that information. You've got to trust whoever it is who's telling you that. Right. Sometimes I make mistakes. I probably make a number of mistakes every 3-hour programme. And what I try to do is say, by the way, give you a bit of information earlier on. Sorry, that was wrong. Here's what's right. And some people fear that. There's some broadcasters who will never say, I was wrong. Well, I have been wrong on many occasions, and I've tried as much as I can to say, look, I got that wrong, let's correct it now. And I wonder, the bigger the institution, especially at the BBC, what is it about them, do you think, that they won't just say, look, we shouldn't have done this in the first place, we got it wrong. Instead, you've got this guy running around with a 19-page report that the BBC appears to have ignored.
I think it's quite clear, and I agree with what you just said, Peter. There's nothing wrong with being wrong, and someone admitted it, and I've seen you do that on screen, so I know you're telling me the truth. And, that's how it should be. This is a massive cover-up. There's no two ways about it. We've been waiting for it to come out for a long time, not just about Trump, but I think about many things. We're being hoodwinked by our own, what really should be our national press, but it's not, because it is a quango. It is privately run. And I ask the question also, this is almost like an elitist type of attitude by them. We're better than everybody. It doesn't matter what you do to us. We just sack somebody and we just move on and get another person in. And this is what happens in this type of echelons of business. But what I bring also to this argument is taxpayers or license fee payers, shall we call them, like myself, pay a license to watch news, and I stopped watching the BBC some time ago. I only look at it to compare it to the news that you guys and GB and other people are putting out, and it's just totally different. It's not telling the truth. So as a license fee payer, should people be turning around and saying, well, hang on a minute, you're in breach of your contract? Now, I've never read the actual licensing contract, what the license is.
But you're right. We've just got to go to the news in a second. I'm not cutting you off, Kevin, but you're right in that you're paying that fee and they're meant to be impartial, truthful, and if they make mistakes, correct
and it's
them.
corrupt.
Instead, on this occasion, they were told this is wrong. Surely, if you got that 19-page report, you would immediately say, right, we've got to have an investigation into this. We've got to find out what's happened, Kevin.
Yeah, and what they do, and they just hide it behind the desks. Oh, it will go away.
Yeah,
Well, they obviously haven't learnt much from talkTV yet, because you guys are there to expose the truth.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. Got to go to the news, but thank you, Kevin. Great call and very nice call as well. Lots more to come. We will, of course, bring you up to date with what's happening in Reagan National Airport in Virginia, just outside DC as well. Plenty more to come in the next hour. Now the news. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It's just on 6 o'clock. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. The breaking news from Washington is that flights have now resumed at Reagan National Airport. There was a bomb alert there. It seems to have been sorted out. That is Reagan National Airport just outside Washington. So if we hear any more on that, I expect we probably won't. But if we do between now and 7, we will bring it to you, of course. We're talking about Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, setting out the choices she faces as Chancellor. Lots of people getting in touch, not happy about what she's saying, and will she be breaking her previous pledge on national insurance, on VAT, on income tax as well, not going to put those up, she said previously on a number of occasions. Well, she's done an interview this evening where she has failed 4 times to rule out raising taxes. That's just one of the interviews that she's done this evening, and of course she was questioned by Her Majesty's Press Corps at the Downing Street speech earlier on today. We'll reflect on that with Graham Stewart, the Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness, is coming up in just a second. We'll also talk about the BBC's bias on Hamas. Nadia Sawalha, another bizarre rant that she's put out on a university and a free speech row over the demands of Israeli academics. We'll talk about that, and also what's in the sun and whatever you want to talk about, because there's plenty of time between now and 7 o'clock when Kevin O'Sullivan takes over to talk to me. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 870 07722 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, less than a minute please, 0344 499 1000. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on that number, or you can give me a ring on that number, 0344 499 1000. Let's get started here on Talk Drive. Well, a big day for the Chancellor, an early morning speech, and really this story has followed her around all day. It's been a very dramatic story, especially because VAT, national insurance and income tax are the three taxes. They make up about 75% of the taxes that are paid into the Exchequer. She said previously she's not going to raise taxes. Today, not so much. Earlier, this is what she said and the choices she says she faces as Chancellor. This was a speech in Downing Street.
When I was appointed Chancellor, people put their faith in me to take our country forward. Not to be swayed by political convenience. Not to always do what is popular, but to do what is right. At the budget, I will continue to deliver on the priorities of the British people. Cutting NHS waiting lists, cutting the national debt, and cutting the cost of living. And in the context of the long-term challenges on our productivity and heightened global uncertainty, any Chancellor of any party would be standing here today facing the choices that I face.
Jenny in Bicester says, Peter, the borrowing costs have been higher under Labour than they were under Truss. Stop the lies. Jane says, when the Tories mentioned global events whilst in government, Labour says that wasn't true and blamed the Tories. Well, Rachel Reeves also spoke about the burden of national debt.
The UK's national debt now stands at £2.6 trillion, equivalent to 94% of GDP. Before the mini-budget, our borrowing costs were in the middle of the pack compared to other advanced economies. But now we have the highest borrowing costs of any G7 country. Today, 1 in every £10 of taxpayers' money is spent on debt interest. Not paying that debt down, but just paying the interest to our creditors. At the budget last year, I changed the fiscal rules to strike a careful balance, to invest more in capital alongside a credible plan to grow our economy and bring debt down within this Parliament. That was the right decision to break the cycle of low productivity and low growth.
Dawn says, I watched Rachel Reeves' speech. She was so wooden she needed a carpenter. I wonder who wrote it. Well, similarly unimpressed was Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, and the Conservatives. These are her thoughts on what Rachel Reeves said this morning.
The Chancellor's speech was one long waffle bomb. A laundry list of excuses. She blamed absolutely everybody else for her own choices, her own decisions, her own failures. She claims she will focus on the priorities of the British public. Whose priority is it to pay more tax? It is basic economics that if you tax something, you get less of it. Remember those graduates who aren't finding work? Some people are blaming AI. It's not AI's fault. You can draw a direct line between what Rachel Reeves did in the budget last year and the dire prospects that many of those graduates are facing now.
Stephen Millings in Belfast says, waffle bomb. I demand the Oxford English Dictionary add that word immediately. And Timothy Dolan from Barnsley says, Rachel Reeves' pre-budget speech is more likely to spook the markets and confidence. Well, we've seen that already today with some of the economic news that's coming out. Markets don't like uncertainty, and that speech was just letting industry know our finances are in dire stress under her administration. I would imagine Timothy's sentiments will probably be agreed with by Graham Stewart, the MP for Beverley and Holderness for the Conservatives. Graham, thank you for joining us this evening. What did you make of what Rachel Reeves said today?
Well, she has made it absolutely clear, for which we can be grateful, that she's going to break all the promises she made, not only at the manifesto when they said they wouldn't put up taxes on working people, as you say, income tax, VAT and national insurance. She's already broken that a year ago. And then, if you remember, she went around the studios, she spoke to all the business groups, and she said, in terms, I will not be back. I will not be asking for more tax from business and from ordinary people. And today, it's quite clear that she's reneging on that as well. So I think people just feel horrified and trying to make out, as she does, with her waffle bomb of and laundry list of excuses, as Kemi so well put it. It's her fault. We haven't had a global pandemic this year. We haven't had a new war break out. We've just had a Labour Chancellor getting it wrong. And the really sad thing, Peter, is you look back, and actually we were coming out of COVID. We were coming out of the energy crisis. We got inflation. It was tough. Jeremy Hunt took some tough decisions. We got inflation back to 2%. That meant when you went to the supermarket, you weren't getting your prices going up and up. It's nearly doubled since Labour came in. Unemployment has gone up every single month since July of last year. That's what Labour does. And she's here again, and she thinks it's the Conservatives' fault that she put too much tax on business last year with her ridiculous jobs tax, which has meant that people aren't being recruited, they're not being promoted, they're not getting pay rises, and would you believe it, the economy is flatlining. Well, that's a result of Labour's choices. But instead of deciding that she's got it wrong and U-turning, which is what she should do, she's decided, no, I'll give more of the same medicine to the patient, and the recovering patient in July last year is being turned into a very sickly one indeed by a Chancellor who has absolutely no clue how to look after us.
Are global factors not at least part of this, Graham?
Well, which ones are you thinking of, Peter? I'm looking around, I'm seeing, when they talk about, high inflation under the Conservatives. Well, high inflation was everywhere. Germany had a higher peak of inflation than we did. Is Germany got a peak in inflation at the moment? No. The United States? I mean, who does? Only the UK. Why? There's only one reason, and that's Rachel Reeves' choices. And business is all there, all the business groups, from the CBI to the IOD to the Federation of Small Businesses, Make UK, all of them. They're just saying, stop, this is ridiculous.
So why isn't she listening? She says she doesn't want to do what's popular, she wants to do what's right. Your view and her view on that would be very, very different.
Yeah, well, she said, and what did she start off her clip that you showed earlier was, people put their faith in me, she said. Well, put the faith in you to do what you said. You said you were going to make growth your number one mission. Well, how does putting up tax on every single job in the country encourage growth? Who knew, Peter, that it would turn out that sticking the jobs tax on actually cut growth? It didn't increase it. If you bring in the farm tax, what does that do? If you bring in the education tax, I mean, fancy putting a tax on education. No one in Europe's ever put a tax on education, and this Labour government's done it purely out of sort of class spite. Everything they've done has failed, and they are going to go back and do more of it.
So what would the Conservatives do differently, Graham? What would the
we would get Britain working again. That's what Kemi gave. The clip you showed from her was part of a speech this morning. We've done the work, is exactly as Kemi said she wanted to do, make sure that we don't go out with cheap promises we can't deliver. She's identified, I think it's 23 billion of benefit savings. We've got to cut this spiralling cost of the benefit system. We can't have motability cars for people with minor disabilities. We've got to make sure we look after those who are severely disabled and furthest away from work. Yes, we've got to look after them, but other people need to get back into work. So that's 23 billion. We offered to work with Labour to help deliver it, but they couldn't even deliver a 5 billion saving. So they U-turned on that. They U-turned quite rightly, I'm pleased to say, on the winter fuel payment, and so suddenly, because of their weakness, they've got a big fiscal hole.
There's still a lot more.
The solution isn't to cut spending, which it ought to be, because our state is too big. We've got an ageing population, and we've got more and more people who are living off the state, and a smaller and smaller number of people paying for it.
They're still more popular than you, though, in the opinion polls. Labour at 23%, the Conservatives languishing at 16%.
Yeah, well, I'm not too fussed about that. We're a long, long way off from a general election. The most important thing is to do what's right. And British people know that spending money you haven't got, running an enormous deficit, is not smart politics. And both Reform and Labour do not have a commitment to fiscal discipline. That's exactly what Kemi's got. And she had a really good conference. She gave a brilliant speech today. And, the most important thing is to tell people the truth. And it's not always what they want to hear. It may not be popular, may not immediately resonate when you speak to the opinion pollsters. But the important thing is, do you think this country has to live within its means? Yes or no?
Let's talk about another story dominating today. I'd be very interested to hear your view on this, Graham. This is the BBC Trump scandal. Let's just remind ourselves of the clip of Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the BBC is accused of doctoring.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
The BBC accused its Panorama programme, a 19-page dossier floating around on all of this, problems about its coverage of the Middle East as well. Graham, what is your reaction to that and the fact that this appears to have been buried and not actually acted upon by some very, very senior people in the BBC, including its head of news, including its chairman?
Exactly. And the person whose job it was to blow the whistle if something like this happened wasn't getting the traction they thought it should get to recognise the seriousness of this, and took it directly to the chairman and didn't even get a reply. What is wrong? I mean, the BBC used to be the gold standard of broadcasting, not just in this country, but actually globally. And now you've got, on the eve of an election in the United States, you have the BBC utterly misrepresenting one of the candidates, Donald Trump, to make out that he said something which he did not say. That is outrageous. And when that is pointed out by someone whose job it is to look for that kind of malfeasance within the BBC to the chairman, they don't even get a reply. I mean, it's shocking, and yet somehow, you know, we've seen this kind of bias in the BBC. You might touch on the Hamas story as well. I mean, it's, you know...
Yeah, we've talked about that today, and actually your party colleague, Caroline Dinenage, the chairwoman of the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, has written to the BBC about this. What do you think should happen now?
Well, Peter, I mean, if those facts that I've repeated, which I'm led to believe are true, if that is true, and the whistleblower went to the chairman, I think repeatedly, and never got a reply, how can that person continue as chairman of the BBC? How can the Director General continue? I mean, I know and like Tim Davie, but he's the boss. You take the rap, don't you? And the BBC cannot be allowed to do that. And what could be more important than the US election and then for the BBC to misrepresent it? What could be more important than in the Middle East, where there's such strong feelings, such a horrific situation, to have the BBC misrepresenting what goes on there? Heads need to roll, and I know you, Peter, will be like me. You don't want to see some junior thrown under the bus. The people at the top own the responsibility.
Certainly.
And I think the BBC needs a change. It needs to recognise it. And I hope Lisa Nandy, who's a straight-talking person, she's the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. I mean, she doesn't share my politics, but I think Lisa's a straight person, and I hope she will recognise that this is an absolute scandal and something needs to be done about it.
Graham, thank you. That is Graham Stewart there, who is the MP for Beverley and Holderness, Conservative MP, joining us this evening. Steve's given me a ring from Leeds, 0344 499 1000. Steve, what do you make of the BBC Trump row? You're very welcome to the programme.
Well, listening to your MP there, the one thing he didn't say was people being held accountable. Right? So,
well, he did talk about senior people certainly being held accountable.
Senior people being asked to retire with a massive pension. So let me just explain two things. The Charter of the BBC guarantees its independence and its non-bias.
Impartiality.
If you breach that charter and bring the reputation of the organisation, whether it's the police or the medical services, into disrepute, you potentially are liable for the charge of misconduct in a public office. Secondly, this broadcast was put out 1 week before the American election. Now, I would see that as potentially trying to influence or interfere with the elections in a democratically country. If the Russians had done this video, the Americans would be up in arms, saying you're trying to influence the election.
I mean, this was on domestic television. It wasn't. There were very, very few people watching it who actually had a vote in the election. But I know what you mean.
There were people in the UK that were American. That
I know, but that's not going to change the election.
Well, let's put it this way: if the Americans had put out a similar video against Keir Starmer 1 week before our election, do you not think that our government would be saying you're interfering? And bear in mind, this was also at the time when 100 Labour members or Labour Party members went to America to support the Democratic Party.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is the BBC governors should be looked at by the Culture Secretary and brought into Parliament and asked if their actions have brought the BBC into disrepute worldwide, because the BBC worldwide as news as an organisation is seen as a fair advocate of all sorts of things. It's brought the whole of the BBC into disrepute and make it appear that it's biased. So I think potentially it's not about politicians and people in public office getting away with it by being able to retire. We need to start holding people to account legally, like the post office people that are going to get away with it. They're all going to retire with a big pension for getting into disrepute in a public office. We need to start doing it and actually charging these people.
Steve, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Of course, there have been sanctions for various people in the post office, but not enough. I'm sure I would agree with Steve on that. Molly says, I've never trusted BBC News. I don't watch BBC TV, but I'm still forced to pay for it. Why should people have to pay for something they don't use? Richard says how far the UK has fallen. I arrived in California last night, waiting in the queue for the shuttle bus. The guy operating the bus heard us talking and asked if we were from England. Yes, we said. His reply was, you're okay now, you don't need to worry, you're safe. I was shocked. Every time you play that clip of Rachel Reeves, the worse she sounds, says Jane. She's just clueless. And Rob in London says Trump would call the BBC fake news, and he would be right. Plenty of opinions coming into the building on this. I'm going to talk in just a second about a university in a free speech row over the demands of Israeli academics. Also, further BBC bias about Hamas lies. And Nadia Sawalha, she's been up to her old tricks again. Another video where she is talking about the Bob Villan interview with Louis Theroux. As you know, my little mini campaign, 129 days, still no charges within that. We'll talk about that more in just a second here on Talk.
So
if you can find ways of letting the private sector breathe, not having them spending nearly all of their time complying with rules, then you can get an awful lot done. Growth goes up, more people are employed, more people are getting pay rises, more people are moving into higher skilled jobs, and suddenly the money does start to flow into the exchequer. Or if not suddenly, over a year or two, you're in a much, much brighter position. So I'm very keen to hear what Reform are going to do on that. And I think they're likely to stay consistent on that.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Let's hear a couple of voice notes now. You can send these in on 0344 499 1000. Ed has been in touch.
The one thing that Rachel Reeves has got control of is spending, foreign aid. How much do we spend on foreign aid in total? Just cut that and you don't have to increase tax.
It's been cut a number of times, Ed, and yes, there are still billions we send abroad, but that's really gone down to a huge degree. I don't have the exact figures to hand, but certainly it was 0.7% of what the country makes, then it was 0.5%, and it's gone down even further. Great voice, Ed, as well. Are you German, or I just wonder where you're from? Brilliant voice, very booming. I can imagine you sort of announcing like a film or something. Really, really great voice. Ian has been in touch as well on Rachel Reeves.
Just talking about Rachel Reeves's stupid speech this morning. The sad thing is that for the last 20 years, the country's been living beyond its means, and successive governments of all colours have actually exacerbated the problem by their free giveaways and their actually blinkered vision in terms of cutting welfare spending, cutting benefits, cutting foreign aid. They've creating red tape. They've done so much to inhibit business and so much to just fleece the working man to give to stupid causes, that they're all culpable of putting us in this position.
Thanks for that, Ian. I appreciate that. Stephen's been in touch as well and talked about what Rachel Reeves has been saying, when I was appointed Chancellor, people put their faith in me. No, they didn't. Starmer put his faith in you, Rachel. Big difference, says Stephen. So thank you for that. I want to just talk a little bit about Nadia Sawalha now. Now, she's been on before. We played a rant of hers online, I think it was last week, when we talked about that. She was in a watermelon top and wearing a shirt which had watermelons on it, which are often seen as a support for Hamas. Obviously, there's no suggestion she's actually supporting Hamas. Could be a complete coincidence. Maybe it isn't, though. Nadia Sawalha has posted another thing. This is about the interview that Louis Theroux did with Pascal Robinson Foster, who is the singer in Bob Vylan. Nadia Sawalha talking again in support of the Palestinian cause. This is what she said most recently.
Have a little look around about what people are trying to say about the fabulous interview that Louis Theroux did with Bob Vylan. Do you remember? The biggest villain in the genocide. A brilliant interview in the style that we know very well and love very much from our national treasure. Come back here after you've had a look around and then comment below. Hands off Louis, folks. He's way too smart and way too successful and way too loved for you to make even a little dent. P.S. So many of us are sick and tired of being bullied, you know. The threat that has hung over our heads for years and years, that we may be called anti-Semitic, you've worn it out. You've worn it out.
You've worn it out, the threat of being called anti-Semitic. It has been worn out. That is the view of the actress Nadia Sawalha, the Loose Women presenter as well. I wonder what ITV think about that. Can we ask the ITV press office, actually? She's on Loose Women. We're going to ask the ITV press office what they think about that. And her series of rants on all of this, the brilliant, as she put it, fabulous interview with Bob Vylan. It's actually with Pascal Robinson Foster, who said that he would say death, death to the IDF. He'd do it again and twice on Sundays. That is what he said in that interview with Louis Theroux. But Nadia Sawalha apparently thinks that's brilliant. She thinks that Louis Theroux is a national treasure. I think we know what her views on this are, and I think there are many questions for Nadia Sawalha in regard to her views. So we will talk about that. We'll continue to talk about it, and we'll continue to talk about Bob Villan. We'll continue to talk about Pascal Robinson Foster, because it's now 129 days since he made those comments, hateful, anti-Semitic comments, on stage at Glastonbury, where he called death, death to the IDF, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So he said that on the BBC. He was kept on air for another 40 minutes. And we know that Avon and Somerset Police, headed by Chief Constable Sarah Crew, has not, as far as we know, interviewed him, cautioned him, arrested him, or asked the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, to charge him. We do know from Avon and Somerset Police that they told us last week that they've received information and guidance from the CPS and are deciding what to do. They're reviewing that. Well, it's been a number of days since they've reviewed that, and we don't think that anything else has necessarily happened there. They certainly haven't told us that. We keep asking them. We have a standing bid on this programme, on any of my programmes, for Chief Constable Sarah Crew to come on to talk to us and to tell us why it's taken 129 days, and really straightforwardly on national television, Pascal Robinson Foster chanted death, death to the IDF. He then later lied about the fact that he said that he was talking about merely the institution of the Israeli army. Previously, only a few weeks previously, he talked about the fact that he was referring to individual soldiers. And what about all those people who chanted it back as well at Glastonbury? Will anything happen to them? There's so many questions for Sarah Crew. She has so far declined my repeated and standing invitation to be interviewed on this programme. They did, in fairness, give us a statement last week, which I read out. There's no update on that. And Sarah Crew has not come on this programme. And still, 129 days, no arrest of Pascal Robinson Foster. Why? Why is it taking so long? Lots to discuss on all of that, and Rachel Reeves as well, and the BBC. Phil in Essex says the BBC should be sold off. All funding from the taxpayers should cease within a year, and then if they wish to continue, they should continue as a commercial station. I'm sick to death of listening to their woke agenda that they keep trying to shove down everybody's throat. And for this latest blatant lies and misconception of Donald Trump's speech, an outrage, they should be fully ashamed of themselves, says Phil in Essex. Leslie says it makes me so angry when I see everybody defending Donald Trump over this BBC debacle. Has everybody forgotten the crimes he has been indicted for? He has publicly defamed, defrauded and threatened people for years. He also demanded that Mike Pence, who was of course his vice president in the first Trump administration, essentially overturn the election by returning or literally rejecting votes. He also encouraged the insurrection at the Capitol, where the speaker was threatened with her life and one person got killed, then pardoned these thugs, says Leslie. Rachel Reeves also in the frame. Many people want to talk about what she is saying today. Jess is in Kent and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Jess, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello, hi. I just wanted to say that I think Rachel Reeves is scaremongering again.
How do you think she's doing that, Jess?
Well, the thing is, the fact that she has put the budget, she's chosen the very latest date she possibly could. She's left people in limbo, guessing what's going to happen.
There's a lot of uncertainty, isn't there? But
and that's the problem. And she's caused even more by this stupid, the only word I can use for it, speech today, that said absolutely nothing apart from what we already know, that she's going to lie yet again and take more tax off us.
Taxes are going to go up. There's no doubt about that in my mind. There's even less doubt in my mind.
They have to. Yeah. They probably have to, given what's going on. But
I don't think they have to. I think they could come down. I think they could deal with this better, and they could let the state do less. In terms of all the money that is spent in the country, 44% of it is the state, essentially. It's a huge amount of money.
They waste on the asylum hotels, the amount of waste there. They waste by fobbing doctors off with pay rises to allow them to retire and rehire, so they get pensions and a salary. This two-tier system, if you look at how much output from a private sector person compared to a civil servant, they literally, probably not allowed to say it, but it's the day away. because they just don't do their job.
I think some civil servants do and some civil servants don't, Jess. But if you are someone who's attempting to create wealth, working for some, maybe you're someone who has their own business or is trying to put some money into the economy, those people have been hammered in the last year. There's no doubt about that, Jess.
Absolutely, but it is a two-tier system. We put into our pensions, and yet you've got the public servants who get golden-plated pensions.
huge contributions.
We can't afford them, and we should be saying no more.
Jess, I think a lot of people feel the same way. A lot of people feel the frustration. I can hear it there in your voice. There's lots to come on this. We'll see what the budget says on the 26th of November. That is what Rachel Reeves is going to tell us all and let us know in about 3 weeks' time. Tomorrow, when Jane Moore will be presenting between 10 and 1 on this show, I'm going to be with her in the studio talking about Prime Minister's questions because no doubt some of this will come up. No doubt Keir Starmer will say we can't speculate. Well, what was Rachel Reeves doing this morning, if not speculating? We'll talk about all of that with Jane Moore. No doubt there will be an awful lot to discuss in The Sun tomorrow. We will talk about what's in that paper with John Lucas, their night news editor, in just a second here on Talk. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Steve in East Yorkshire's been in touch and says, Peter, if you were to go on stage and be filmed chanting death, death to the Palestinians, do you think the police would wait 129 days before arresting and charging you? No, me neither. Well, my one-man campaign to get answers out of Avon and Somerset Police about why it's been 129 days and Pascal Robinson Foster, the scumbag, the anti-Semite from Bobville, hasn't been arrested. Why is that the case? Well, they say they've got advice from the Crown Prosecution Service and they will be making a decision on something anyway, some sort of progress fairly soon. We'll keep on that. And thank you to Nat, who's in Tel Aviv, who said a couple of years ago I switched to Talk from ITV to get away from the likes of Nadia Sawala, who along with her husband actually blocked me for speaking out for our hostages here in Israel. Must you give this vile woman publicity? Great show otherwise. Well, thank you for that, Nat, and I'm afraid we're just going to talk about these issues. We're going to talk about some of the people who make these ridiculous numerous comments, including Pascal Robinson-Foster, who, as far as I'm concerned, should be arrested, charged and sent to prison for his vile anti-Semitism. Right then, let's talk about The Sun and what is in the paper tomorrow. We've got John Lucas is with us, the Night News editor. Hello, sir.
Evening.
Tell us about the tax traitor Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she is a traitor. The show's very popular on TV, but she's becoming less popular with the voters, or she will be if.
Is she Alan Carr?
Yeah, she could be. She could be.
Yeah.
If she follows through with what we expect in this budget in 3 weeks' time is going to be quite, heavy tax increases. So, like the rest of the country, we had this on at 8:10 in the morning, whatever it was, very eager to find out exactly what we can expect. As you know, we didn't find out anything. I think Kemi Badenoch called it a waffle bomb.
Yep.
Lots and lots of, maybe whinging's too far, but lots and lots of explaining about or complaining about the Tories, reform. She talked about the OBR, she talked about tariffs, the war in Ukraine, headwinds, not quite sure what headwinds are, Brexit, inflation, debt, interest rates, productivity, all these issues that she's saying are basically laying the groundwork for what we're going to see some tax rises in the near future.
Yeah.
Now, and she points out, we've got national debt, we've got lots and lots of issues. Quite rightly, as our political editor Jack Elsom's pointed out on Twitter, X this afternoon, he says, she's right to point out the ticking time bomb of national debt, but it was already at eye-watering levels.
Yeah, exactly.
When Labour came into power, during an election where they promised not to increase any taxes, and we already saw at the last budget, I think it's a £40 billion tax raid, however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
And Rachel Reeves said at the time, that's it, I won't be coming back for more. What's on the table? We don't know the details. Could be income tax, could be VAT,
national
gambling
insurance,
taxes,
yeah,
pensions
loads
rate,
of different ways, yeah.
Council tax going up again. It clearly there's some bad stuff in mind here, because she's sort of got form for doing this and doing these speeches that lays the groundwork.
And has clearly spooked the markets as well.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. And it remains to be seen what's going to happen. And also, people, if you're going to be paying more tax, people want value for money. They don't want.
Well, I think I said this. I was blue in the face before the election. I said, if there is a party that comes up and says, look, we're probably going to have to put taxes up. However, what we will do is we will give you value for money. We'll give you public services that actually work. I think people actually might have thought about tax in a different way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about David Beckham, or Sir David Beckham, as he now is. He's been knighted. No sign of Brooklyn though.
No, it's it's a big day for the Beckhams. Obviously, hugely proud day for David and his family. This rift,
Sir David to you.
Family, Sir David. Yeah, you have to get used to it.
And Lady Victoria.
Lady Victoria. Well, she always was, wasn't she? She was
Posh Spice.
That's right. Now she really is Posh Spice.
I mean, if someone doesn't call her Lady Beckham, she'll probably say, "Who do you think you are?"
Absolutely, yeah. And look, it's a great occasion for him. He's as A-list as you can get in Britain, and he's had some sort of damp eyes, a few tears. Nice occasion. He had Victoria had never made an item of clothing for David, even though they've been married however many years now, I don't know. And she's obviously more famous now, arguably, as a fashion designer. Never made anything for him. She made this suit that he wore, which he said was inspired by Charles, because obviously Charles has got great fashion sense.
Yeah.
Loves the suit. It's a great day. He said, look, if the kids want to call me Sir Dad or Sir Son, they can. And he just said, it's a huge honour and, lovely day. He's obviously, this is for his contribution to sport.
Yep.
When you actually look back, 115 caps for England. He's, I didn't realise something. He's the only English player to win top flight league titles in 4 different countries. So England, Spain, US and France, and the only one to score in 3 different FIFA World Cups. You've got to remember, in our lifetimes, we remember he was at one point became the most disliked, hated man in the country for a short little period, and now he's Sir David. So it just goes to show, there's hope for us all.
Well, I'm sure he'll be a national treasure before too long.
Yeah.
Speaking of national treasures, Mr. Blobby's long-awaited comeback as the centre of our trademark, Roy. I know the Sun's been following this in great depth. Tell us about this.
Look, I think this could be the story of the day, Mr. Blobby. So we told the other day, Mr. Blobby is coming back, so it's Unique Television. Plan to bring Mr. Blobby back, traditional suit and all, famous from Noel's house party. Noel Edmonds founded this company, Unique Television. What they didn't realise is there's a chap called Joseph Cook, who is a huge Blobby aficionado, as we all were at one point.
Of course.
But he's a 37-year-old man. He absolutely loves Mr. Blobby, and he realised that the trademark, the BBC's trademark, had gone out of date.
It had lapsed.
It lapsed.
Yeah.
So he took on the trademark himself. He made his own costume for £700. It took him 3 years. Made it from foam and pink latex sheeting.
Well, it take 3 years to make a Mr. Blobby.
I guess.
I've never tried to make a Mr. Blobby costume, but I imagine even for someone like me, it wouldn't take 3 years.
I don't know. It sounds like a very complex operation, but he did it.
Detailed work.
Very dedicated to this. And he says, so what he does is he goes to parties and he does appearances. And but it's not just like your local birthday party. He's done stuff at the Dorchester Hotel.
You turned up at the Dorchester Hotel.
Yeah, I think it was a booked.
And Mr. Blobby was
it was a booked event.
Bit random.
Who knows why? God knows. But anyway, now he is threatened with legal action by Unique.
Okay.
Because they want to bring Blobby back, and actually they don't have the rights to do it.
But have they got a Blobby foam leg to stand on? That's my question.
Very
legally,
good. Yeah.
you know, is there?
It's going to be messy. But Mr. Cook, he says it's not about the money.
Right.
He says, I did it to safeguard Mr. Blobby's legacy. So that's all he's interested in. If he can come to a deal with Unique Television where he says, you know, I'll give up the rights as long as they let me
be Mr. Blobby.
The only Mr. Blobby.
Okay, yeah. I think a deal could be done. A deal could be done. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. Tell us about beer today, gone tomorrow. Enjoying a pint could increase the risk of going bald. Declare your interest, John.
Yes, well, yeah. Weirdly, I've got the byline on this one in tomorrow's paper.
Right.
Yeah, if you found yourself with less hair than you used to have, you could blame beer.
Right.
So this is a study from the University of Porto. So they have strongly linked drinking alcohol to going bald, being follically challenged, as some people like to say.
As someone who would never touch a pint of beer or any alcoholic beverage, John, do you think this is true?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I started losing my hair at quite a young age. So, and had I been drinking beer?
How old were you? You started losing the
I think
hair?
It started going properly 21.
21, right? That's early. That's early. Yeah.
Well, it started. I had what they call a widow's peak.
Widow's peak. Yeah.
As a teenager.
Well, I actually, believe it or not, John, I actually had lunch with a member of your gay fan base at lunchtime today, who said you had quote unquote Jason Statham vibes going on. That is a direct quote from a member of your gay fan base. So there we go.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But if you want it, they're not saying you can grow it back, but if you want to maintain it, you need to switch to a diet of greens, broccoli, kale, because they've got anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. They said it's not just alcohol; it's having too much vitamin A. So too much cheese, eggs, oily fish can make you go bald. But you know, I think it's a good look. Yes, you're
my friend and your gay fan base, you know. And what about, would you consider a syrup? That's my question.
I would never, ever, and I wouldn't have the hair transplant.
I know someone who had a hair transplant, $6,000 it cost him, actually, and it does look very natural.
Yeah.
So, but not for you.
Not for me.
Not for you. Okay. Well, listen, I look forward to your byline in the paper tomorrow. Beer today, gone tomorrow. Lots in the paper. And plenty more to talk about between now and 7. If you want to get your voice on the air before Kevin O'Sullivan comes on, 0344 499 1000. In the meantime, thank you to John Lucas, Night News Editor of The Sun and gay icon. Stay with us here on Talk.
if you can find ways of letting the private sector breathe, not having them spending nearly all of their time complying with rules, then you can get an awful lot done. Growth goes up, more people are employed, more people are getting pay rises, more people are moving into higher skilled jobs, and suddenly the money does start to flow into the exchequer. Or if not suddenly, over a year or two, you're in a much, much brighter position. So I'm very keen to hear what Reform are going to do on that. And I think they're likely to stay consistent on that.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Don't forget that from the 1st of December, Monday the 1st of December, our talkTV app is on the move. All of your favourite shows and podcasts are going to continue over on the Talk app. So if you're watching or listening right now on the talkTV app, you're going to need to delete that, download the Talk app from the App Store or Google Play, put it in your phone, put it on your connected device, all done, all sorted, and then you're ready for the 1st of December. I did it yesterday. It took me about 2 minutes, and if a technophobe like me can do it, so can you. Someone also got in touch with me and said that when they put it on their phone, they can't hear it or they can't hear it if the phone is off. Actually, if you hit listen live, you should be absolutely fine. I was chatting to one of our people outside, our news editor, Ricky Freelove. He says he does that every day, and it works for him, so hopefully it'll work for you too. Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Laurie, who said, I essentially felt uncomfortable with Kevin Hurley a little bit earlier on. He was 100% correct. I've seen a young black man being arrested and suddenly they were surrounded by what appeared to be fairly aggressive anti-police, mainly black people. It was disturbing, says Laurie. I wasn't uncomfortable with what Kevin was saying. I was just interested in hearing it, certainly. Lee says, great show as always. Trump should make the BBC leave the USA. It can't be trusted after this revelation. That's my opinion and 2 cents worth. Thank you, Lee. And another person says, a publicly funded left-wing, unaccountable brainwashing propaganda machine. The BBC is anything but British. Lots to discuss on that, including with David in Kent, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. David, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say about the BBC?
Oh, hi there, yes, on the BBC. Really, I think they lost everyone's respect during COVID. Really, that's when it all went wrong. You had people like Robert Peston, was your BBC, and others who were on the BBC, saying things.
I think he might have been ITV by that stage, but he certainly was business editor at the BBC. But yeah, the reason I sometimes lose respect for Robert Peston is that he just asks really, 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 really long questions at press conferences.
Oh, he does, doesn't he? But at the BBC as well, they were just saying things like, "Oh, don't you think you could lock down earlier? Don't
yeah, and sooner and more. Yeah.
Don't you think you should copy Nicola Sturgeon or Mark Dripford in Wales? You know, stuff like this." And never did they ever ask about the cost of doing these things and the associated results and costs on health and the cost and the economy. 39 billion quid on test and trace. I think it didn't work, which is equivalent, more or less, of the black hole. It's insane. But that's when they lost everyone's respect.
I actually think it went back further. I think it was the Savile scandal at Newsnight. I worked for Newsnight. I grew up watching Newsnight. I worked for them for a couple of years. I worked with Jeremy Paxman. He was an absolutely brilliant journalist and a great man as well. Admired him hugely. And when the Savile scandal happened, I just thought, you got to close this programme. You cannot have a programme. And Newsnight's recovered in the ratings and maybe in reputation, I don't know. But in regard to the shutting down of the Savile story, I just thought that was completely wrong and on every level, and I don't think that there was proper accountability for any of that either.
Yeah, that's very true. We never really ever got no one ever seems at the high level to be held to account for that.
Well, the editor of the programme got another job out of it. I mean, it was very, very strange. David, listen, thanks so much for your comments. Do give me another ring. I'm just going to move on to Liam in Bedfordshire, who wants to talk about Rachel Reeves. Liam, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say? Hi, Liam. You there? We got you, Liam? No, we haven't got Liam, so I shouldn't have got rid of our caller a second ago. That was rather stupid. Ah well, I thought we had Liam there, but lots to discuss certainly, even in the next 4 minutes of the programme. I know that Kevin O'Sullivan is coming in a minute. He'll be here between 7 and 10, and I'll be back indeed every day this week, because tomorrow I'll be back with Jane Moore at 12 o'clock. She is in tomorrow between 10 and 1, and we'll be talking about Prime Minister's questions. I'll be with her between 12 and about 12:30. We'll have a chat with her about that. Also, I'll be back with Drive tomorrow between 4 and 7, and on Thursday, Friday as well. And Saturday and Sunday, I'm here between 10 and 1. So a busy old time, certainly, at the moment. And there's lots going on Talk as well. And remember, you can keep listening and watching to us through the new app. And that is Monday, the 1st of December is the deadline. The talkTV app is going to be closed. And the Talk app, the new one, it's confusing because they sound very similar, but you can download it very, very quickly as time goes on. Unfortunately, we had a bit of a technical problem a little bit earlier on. Couldn't speak to a professor. We wanted to talk about the story in regard to the Israeli university. This is a really interesting one, actually. A prominent London university here, SOAS in the University of London, has been accused of breaking free speech rules by hosting a conference where Israeli academics have got to declare their institutions are built on land taken from Palestinians. We did want to talk to an American academic about that, but sadly the technology beat us on that one. But we'll have him on another occasion, and the requirements are said to apply to all authors and participants who are working and studying at an institution located on land appropriated from indigenous peoples by settler colonial regimes. This is a worldwide thing. There's a big problem, and the policy citing Tel Aviv University as one of the main examples of how land acknowledgement in the case of what they call settler colonies would apply. And there are just so many issues about this, certainly, and the fact that an acknowledgement is needed even before academic research can be properly cited and indeed discussed. It's a really, really worrying thing. Also, I mean, Nadia Sawalha certainly talking about a group of people who want their pound of flesh about Louis Theroux and his, as she put it, brilliant interview with Bob Villan. And she said that she's not anti-Semitic because that's worn out. It is worn out as a phrase. And certainly Nadia Sawalha, I think we can probably look again now actually at what Nadia Sawalha was saying there. We discussed this earlier on in the programme. So let's just see her clip again. This is the actress and Loose Women panellist Nadia Sawalha.
Just go to Kevin.
No, that's Rachel Reeves, unfortunately, but not to worry. We will talk to Kevin O'Sullivan in just a second. Kevin is here, of course, between 7 and 10, and he will be here on the other side of the news with his show. Kevin, great to see you. How
Hello,
are you doing?
Peter. We've got part 2 of Isabel's incredible interview with this asylum seeker.
It's a belter.
Hotel.
Astonishing story.
A guy called Adam. Tonight's instalment is about the extraordinary story of the disappearing Albanians. He says that busloads of Albanian migrants, cross-channel migrants, would turn up at the hotels, and the next morning there'd be all these flash cars waiting outside, and the Albanians would just climb into them, drive off into the sunset, never to be seen again. Also, many of them go missing on the journey, the coach trip from Dover, Folkestone, Madston, you know, the processing centre, on the way to their hotels. You know, the coach will stop off at a service station and they go missing there as well.